to make sure your microphone's on and speak directly into your microphones. And I hear that we're recording, so I would like to welcome you and call to order the May 14th Port Orchard City Council regular meeting. In the actions we're about to take, I would also remind us of our guiding principles. Are we raising the bar? Are we honoring the past but not living in the past? Are we building connections with outside partners? And is the decision-making process positively impacting diversity, equity, and inclusion? Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have a published agenda, and we have a ton of information you guys are going to get in staff reports and in the mayor's report. So it's probably going to be a little bit of a late evening, so apologize for that. We've got a lot of information to share with you. So we have a published agenda. Is there any proposed amendments to the agenda? Councilmember Roosevelt?
No, Mayor, I'd move to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second that.
So a motion to approve as presented with a second. All in favor of approving the agenda as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is set. We're to our first citizen comment period, and that is for anything that's on this evening's agenda. We have a second citizen comment period at the end of the meeting. If anybody wishes to address the council, and if you're online, use the raise your hand feature, and the clerk will bring you into the meeting. Is there anyone wishing to address the council for items on the agenda? None. I'm going to close that first citizen comment period, and we are to our consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
Mr. Mayor, make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Diener and a second by Councilmember Morrissey to approve the consent agenda as presented. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the consent agenda has been passed.
Mayor, I had one question on the consent agenda.
Certainly.
It's for the chief. Do the Glocks, when they're surplus, do they get destroyed? Or
No, we sell them back in exchange with a FFL so that we can purchase our next generation handguns cheaper.
okay, thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor.
Any other questions on items on the consent agenda? All right.
I did have one question. How big are the Nest kits that we're talking about in the consent agenda?
Dennis, did you want to talk? They're about, I believe, 4 of those yellow top tubs from the large yellow top tubs from Lowe's or Home Depot.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a limited but interim supply during an emergency.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? All right. We've got one presentation this evening, and Mr. Bond, as we're continuing to try to get you guys more information, and with 3 new council members, making sure that everybody has the same information base as the veteran council members. So Nick's going to give us a presentation on the infrastructure and the sewer infrastructure in particular in Basin 7, which is that Ruby Creek area of the city. So, Mr. Bond, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Mayor, and good
Brandy,
evening.
can you remove that box or minimize it, or? I think I can roll that TV closer, but it's going to mess up the camera.
You can also see it on our.
You got it on.
It's online.
It's part of the.
I join. All right, thank you, Mayor, and
Presentation.
I'll wait for the squeaking to stop.
I apologize.
Put out.
It's probably about as far as you want to bring it. Noah.
Yeah, you've got it.
That's good.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Noah. All right, good evening, members of council. Tonight I'm going to walk you through some history of the Basin 7 sewer infrastructure planning that has been done. And as the director who has been here the longest, I have the longest memory on a lot of these things, which probably isn't long enough. And this is a little out of my lane, but I will do my best. So when hopefully that pop-up doesn't mean that Adobe is about to crash. When the city annexed Sewer Basin 7, that began in 2005 and ended in around 2009, and it occurred piecemeal with multiple annexations to bring this basin into the city. Until very recently, Basin 7 was served exclusively by the Albertsons lift station and a 6-inch sewer force main. And my image, I'm realizing, is not, there's an image on this slide that is not displaying. Let me see if I can reload my presentation here.
Of technology, as long as it works.
That's why I have a printed copy and,
Where, Councilmember Chang?
do you want my printed copy?
No, I'm reloading it here.
It was included in our package, so,
Page 105.
yep.
Wasn't
That is-
displaying the same thing he had on his screen.
Understand.
Screen. There we go. All right. So as I was mentioning, the city annexed most of this area between 2005 and 2009. And on the map, you can see the Albertsons lift station. There is a red P, and then there's this purple line that flows north to the Cedar Heights lift station. And I shouldn't say it flow, it is pumped north to the Cedar Heights lift station. That is a 6-inch sewer force main. And the red lines you see elsewhere on this map are gravity sewers, and you'll notice there aren't a lot of gravity sewers in Basin 7. Since annexation, this map was from 10 or so years ago. Some of these sewers these gravity sewers have been extended outward in Basin 7, but at the time of annexation, they had not been extended. And since 2005, the city has seen extensive interest in developing the area. Some development occurred prior to annexation and was permitted by Kitsap County, while other development has occurred since annexation. One of the first projects that we permitted in this basin, and which was ultimately not developed, we called the Tallman property. It was the owner his last name was Tallman, and we had a development pre-application meeting in 2010, followed by an application for a stormwater or a site development activity permit, which was issued in 2010. And this is at Hovde Road and Sydney Road Southwest. There was a proposal for a hotel and a whole bunch of retail pads at this location. The permit was issued, however, the permit actually showed a gravity sewer leaving the site going to Sydney Road where there was no gravity sewer to actually connect to. And so the developer wanted to construct the stormwater pond because at that time they believed that they would vest to stormwater standards, which is no longer the case. And this permit expired in 2016 with the pond having been constructed but no other development occurring on site. Just to the south of this site, there was a property owned by Mr. Kruger. Likewise, there was a pre-application meeting in 2014. We issued a permit to develop retail pads at this site. Ultimately, he put in a construction entrance but never did any further development because there was no sewer availability for this property. That permit expired in 2019. It was sold twice. The second time it was acquired by Kitsap Transit, who intends to build a park and ride on the site. Another project that you're probably familiar with is Stetson Heights. The first iteration of Stetson Heights was an application received by the city in 2007. It was for a preliminary plat for around 350 lots. This plat never went to the hearing examiner for a hearing, and when the recession hit, the developer kept asking us not to process the application because the economy was in bad shape and they weren't sure that they could proceed. The interesting thing about this initial submittal is it showed a pump station at Stetson Heights that would pump sewage along Little Glenwood Road, or what we call Little Glenwood Road, out towards Sidney Glen Elementary and tie into the existing 6-inch force main. And that is ultimately not what was proposed or not what was constructed for a variety of reasons, but for one, you can't extend sewer into rural areas of the county, and the area just north of Stetson Heights is what we call the rural Port Orchard donut of land that cannot be developed at urban levels of development. And so in 2014, the developer agreed to terminate their existing application and reapply for a new preliminary plat, and there was an agreement in place that outlined that their application fees could be rolled into their new application because they had put down a sizable deposit for hearing examiner costs and other costs. But ultimately, Stetson Heights, the first iteration, was abandoned. Stetson Heights version 2 came in as an application in 2014. There were separate applications for Stetson Heights that differ from Stetson Ridge, which is on this map, you can see the center of the page doesn't have lots platted yet. They're going to be building that phase this summer. When they applied for preliminary plat in 2014, we made them go through the city's consultant. At the time, that was BHC Engineering, and BHC prepared a memo outlining the alternatives for sewer connection, but rather than going down Little Glenwood Road, it suggested the construction of either a new lift station or upgrading the Albertsons lift station in the Albertsons parking lot. And so multiple permits, after preliminary plat was granted by the hearing examiner, we issued multiple permits to allow the development of this project. LDAP 20-006 was the permit for the Albertsons lift station. And because we had such a small easement for that lift station, it couldn't be expanded within the existing easement area. But there was the sewer line that connects to Albertsons lift station is in an easement, and so it's either a 15 or a 20-foot wide easement, and they actually built the storage in line flowing to that lift station to increase the wet storage for that facility. And so all of Stetson Heights, all of the phases of Stetson Heights have been recorded now, and those lots are created. Stetson Ridge will likely apply for final plat in the fall or early in 2025. Other developments that have come and gone as ideas in Port Orchard, there's the Port Orchard mixed-use retail. This parcel is shown in the green box here. It's just north of the shopping center that includes Burger King and Mana Sushi, and it shares that same driveway that goes back to the apartments. It was a small, initially a retail proposal in 2015. After we adopted the Ruby Creek sub-area plan, they came in with a mixed-use development proposal that would include some apartments over retail, and neither of these projects have moved forward because there is no sewer serving the site. The Disney and Associates site, this was purchased by Bob Disney and his group sometime in the last 3 years. We held pre-application meetings with the previous owner and then again with Mr. Disney, and Mr. Disney was proposing to bring in a number of tenants, but the anchor tenant was going to be a brew pub, and they were looking at a development that was going to generate significant sewage. I think they were talking about 170 residential equivalents, and so that's a major generator of sewage, and that required both upgrades to the force main in Sydney as well as capacity upgrades to the lift station that would serve this site. And so we had been talking to Bob Disney initially about an interim solution in advance of a regional facility being built, because a project with only 170 ERUs, it really doesn't pencil to build a $3 million lift station to serve such a small project. And so we'll have more to say about this one later on in the presentation. So from the development projects that you've seen, the lack of sewer within the basin has seen a lot of project ideas come to our department and not ultimately move forward because none of the projects were big enough, other than Stetson Heights and the Haven Apartments, which I'll get to in a minute, which were residential projects. None of the projects are big enough on their own to carry the load of building a regional sewer lift station facility. And one of the problems with the Albertsons lift station, you can see this is a picture of it in the upper right here. It's a small fenced area. I think this is like 14 by 14 or 20 by 20. It's not very big. And the easement isn't bigger than this fenced area. And to the east of this fence is a wetland complex and wetland buffers, and the grassy areas north and south of it are also within wetland buffers. And so even if we owned the property to expand this, it's within a critical area where you would have to prepare critical areas reports and do mitigation for the impacts on wetland buffers. So expanding this facility has some environmental challenges, and obviously expanding it into the access lane for Albertsons would also be a major change to their circulation. And so this is part of the reason that Stetson Heights decided to do an inline storage with the gravity sewer that flows to this facility, and then made some minor upgrades to the facility to serve Stetson Heights. But ultimately, it is at its maximum capacity for wet storage and for pumping capacity, not to mention that the 6-inch force main on this lift station is also at its capacity. Another thing that has been present in this basin, the shopping center that includes Mana Sushi and Burger King, as well as the apartments and the medical clinic behind that shopping center. Those developments are currently using grinder pumps that are tied directly into the city's 6-inch force main. That is something that is no longer allowed under the state WAC. We actually, in 2017 or 2018, there was a proposal from somebody else to set up that type of system, and the Department of Ecology told us, no, you can't do that. Grinder pumps that are connected to a force main have to be owned and operated by the city, and so those pumps that are in those facilities are private, but they are connected to a public system. So one of the challenges is anybody who is north of Sedgwick, the gravity sewer isn't deep enough to extend much further to the north, and all of those developers would need to pump into the force main, and the city would have to own those pumps in order for them to connect to the force main, and that was if there's capacity in that force main, which there no longer is room in that facility.
Nick, I have a question.
Yeah,
You can take a breath.
sure.
I thought I heard you say inline storage regarding Stetson. What is inline storage?
So across the Albertsons parking lot, there's a 15 or a 20-foot sewer easement. And so 2 or 3 years ago, that parking lot was ripped up, and it was ripped up in a linear shape that followed that easement line. And what they did, my understanding is that they put a much larger diameter pipe that flows to that lift station, and that larger pipe can back up and actually hold sewage to allow the pumps to then pump that using the force main. That's my understanding.
So
but-
here's your lift station, and we've got a pipe coming into it. They upsized this pipe here to allow for storage capacity.
And how much storage is that? I mean, is that like a septic tank? No.
Not exactly. I'm not we don't have an engineer present, to my knowledge. No.
Was that so
It was
wouldn't
designed by an
overwhelm the-
engineer, though.
Was it
Yeah, it
so
was-
that it wouldn't overwhelm the pumps?
Yeah, and in our new lift stations, we build the vaults that are wet storage capacity that allow, if the power goes out and the generators take time to come online, it allows the sewage to not cause an overflow. And so you have to have a certain amount of time before you have overflow conditions to allow our crews to respond. I think that's the
That's why
gist.
we're digging this big hole on the waterfront, is in the event that the power goes out, the generator doesn't kick on, and right now we have 15 minutes, and we're gonna have an hour or more with this vault to get the portable generator down here, or to get a crew down here to work on it and get it going. So we need to have, we don't wanna be that community you read about in the newspaper where the sewer's bubbling up out of the manhole because we don't have, redundancies to our system.
And just to follow on that, you said portable generator. That's if the main standby generator doesn't.
Doesn't function, correct.
So the pipe is designed to be a reservoir, essentially.
Okay.
It's similar to stormwater storage in the ground.
Or temporary storage, very limited temporary storage, I guess.
Depending on the circumference of the pipe or the diameter of the pipe, it could be several hours.
Yeah, it was a large pipe, I think. I think it was 3 or 4 feet in diameter, if I remember correctly. All right, so as Stetson Heights got underway in 2019, they were looking at options to upgrade the Albertsons lift station. Albertsons wasn't returning their calls. They weren't returning our calls. The folks in Boise had no interest in talking to us about granting us additional rights, and we would have likely had to use a right-of-way agent to do a public acquisition, following the process that we follow on transportation projects. So we got we had all of these pre-apps floating around that we had held over the years in that basin, and we brought all of the engineers on those projects and the property owners together, and we tried to get them to work together so that either Kruger or Tallman would dedicate land for a facility that could serve that entire basin. And ultimately, the timing of everyone's projects was off. Nobody wanted to take the lead in terms of paying for the initial engineering, and Stetson Heights was on a timeline where they needed to get their project done, and they couldn't wait for everybody else. And so ultimately, we had a really good conversation about conceptually laying out what needs to happen in the basin, and we forged a plan going forward, but ultimately Stetson Heights decided to upgrade Albertsons rather than to collaborate on a regional solution, and we developed a plan from that. This is the plan that came out of that meeting, and what happened was Basin 7 was broken into two basins. You can see the crosshatched area to the north would be served by a North Sydney lift station, and then the remaining orange area to the south would be served by the South Sydney lift station. And between those two lift stations, there's a low spot in Sydney Road Southwest that's where the creek flows underneath the road, and the road actually goes down and dips at that point. And extending any sewer to Albertsons to serve these areas, the pipe ends up coming out of the ground. It's too flat and too shallow for you to make the grade in that location without people having to pump into a gravity system. So we identified the need for a new regional facility. The idea was that the sewer line that went out to Stetson Heights in Sedgwick, there you see where it goes from red to green, that sewer would be intercepted and would then flow to the Sydney South Lift Station in the future, and that Sydney South Lift Station would also serve the development along Sydney Road Southwest, the Disney property, the mixed-use property, the Kitsap Transit property, and then we could also take all those grinder pumps, including from the 200 or 108 unit apartment complex, and have those pumps go into a gravity sewer that would go to this new lift station.
Nick, wouldn't this facility also serve the property out by Station 17 too? Would flow
Yes,
in this
that was the next bullet. So
I'm sorry.
the beyond Stetson Heights, both to the south, there's 10 parcels just south of Stetson Heights that are 1 and 2 acre parcels that don't have sewer service, and then there's about 80 acres of McCormick East that is still owned by Doug Scrobutt, and that property. We've identified that there's probably capacity for 500 homes and potentially some commercial development, and we've been talking to Mr. Scrobutt about doing a master plan that would potentially locate either a grocery store or a Target or something that would serve the residents of West Port Orchard so that they're not having to drive all the way across Highway 16 to get to Fred Meyer or Safeway, where we have a ton of traffic congestion. So the idea was that you would intercept some of that commercial traffic near the fire station on Glenwood, and potentially people from Belfair would then come and shop in Port Orchard, kind of on the backside of Port Orchard there. And that's still something that we're having early discussions about at a planning level, but nothing has been changed in our code to allow that to happen. But you can see with all of these projects, there's a lot of potential sewage still coming into this basin. And then the other thing that came out of the basin plan is we identified that you needed a second force main, and our modeling showed a 10-inch diameter force main was needed. It could be connected to the North Lift Station, the South Lift Station, both of the lift stations. That was sort of to be determined. But since Stetson Heights has upgraded Albertsons, I believe it was determined that the Albertsons lift station would stay on the 6-inch force main, as would Sydney North. The new Sydney South lift station would connect to a new 10-inch force main, which would pump up to the Cedar Heights lift station just on the other side of the overpass on Highway 16, which kind of runs diagonally across the site here. So in 2020 or 2021, when we adopted the Ruby Creek subarea plan, we also amended the capital facilities table in the comprehensive plan. And so in our comprehensive plan, you now have a South Sydney lift station, a North Sydney lift station, and a second sewer force main. The cost estimates in 2020, obviously, things have gotten really expensive lately. These were all shown as being 100% capital facility charge funded, meaning that growth is paying for this. These projects can't be funded with ratepayer money. It has to be funded with CFC money. And so we updated our capital facility charge, or our general facility fee for stormwater, a handful of years ago, and that calculation included all of these projects. And so everyone who pays a general facility fee in Port Orchard is contributing to each of these, meaning that the city is collecting money for this, which means the city is supposed to eventually build this or give credit to a developer who would build it. And
Nick, you said stormwater, but I think you intended to say capital facility.
yeah,
charge
we've
for
been talking
sewer.
a lot about stormwater CFCs. It's
Okay. It is sewer capital
sewer
facility
general
charge.
facility fees is the correct term. So the city needs to either build all of these projects on the list or get a developer to build them. And the other thing that happened in this period, we adopted the Ruby Creek subarea plan, and I think most of you have probably seen that. I know that our new council members, I shared this with you when we had your orientation meeting with DCD, but The Sydney Road Southwest Corridor is envisioned to be a mixed-use kind of downtown corridor where you have storefronts up to the road, wide sidewalks, on-street parking, and this really becomes a kind of a second destination for shopping and eating in Port Orchard. And then behind these buildings to the east and west, you could have apartments. The park and ride use was identified as kind of an alternate in the plan that would be allowed. And you would create this synergy. And of course, north of Ruby Creek, there's additional housing that would create a customer base for these spaces. And so this plan was adopted, but it was all contingent on implementation of the sewer basin plan. In the North Basin, the Tallman property was sold to Tarragon, who built the Haven Apartments. They built 216 units that were completed in 2022. The city entered into a general facility fee agreement with the apartment builder. They were able to receive up to $1.75 million in general facility fees. They actually owed $1.841 million in fees, and so the city, under this agreement, was going to receive a lift station and at least just under $100,000 in general facility fee money. Ultimately, Tarragon completed the lift station, but it ended up costing over $3 million once they handed in their receipts, and that was the cost for a private entity to build this. If it was public, it probably would have been even more. So the city received a huge benefit here in that we only gave them credit at 1.75, but we received a facility worth more than $3 million, and we collected almost $100,000 in general facility fees. The sewer lift station also provided for an extension of the gravity sewer line out to the intersection of Hovde and Sydney Road. So in the future, if Sydney Glen wants to get off of septic and connect to sewer, they can do so. And then that gravity sewer can be extended north along Sydney Road to serve the handful of other properties in that North Basin. And so there's room for 3 pumps here. They only were required to put in 2 pumps for their project, but if somebody needs to drop a 3rd pump, that is an expandable facility. And again, this is connected to the 6-inch force main. The Ruby Creek South Basin, so we have calculated sort of how much sewage is likely to flow into this once the entire basin is developed. We've got an assumption for the neighborhood core of about 200 to 300 housing units and 60,000 square feet of retail, which could include restaurants. The Disney commercial development, at least the initial proposal, was a little under 200 ERUs. The Port Orchard retail would be 40 to 50 units of housing and 20,000 square feet of retail. McCormick East, we think it's at least 500 units of housing plus potential commercial development, and what sort of tenants we get is sort of to be determined, but it could be a significantly higher number of ERUs with commercial development. The Kitsap Transit Park and Ride restrooms is probably a single ERU, but there is also a regional park planned there, and so with park users, it could be slightly higher. And then taking the grinder pumps that pump directly to our 6-inch force main and connecting them to this South Sydney lift station is probably about 200 ERUs of additional flow. So there's quite a bit of sewage that has to be handled by the new facility in the Ruby Creek South Basin. And let's see here, the Park and Ride project. So we've been talking to Kitsap Transit for 2 or 3 years. They've been going through an acquisition process where I think they've acquired 1 or 2 of the properties out of the 3 total that they're trying to acquire. And so they have complete engineering plans. They're ready to submit an application for developing this as soon as they secure their property. But the way the Ruby Creek plan was written is that they're not allowed to have a park and ride within 120 feet of the right-of-way of Sydney. And so that ensures that building pads that include commercial uses have to be out at the street. They allow for apartments over retail. And so if this park and ride is developed, they have to leave these pads sort of shovel-ready by because they're going to extend sewer through the site to get to the public restroom. There will be a sewer stub to each of these buildings. And you can see just off the top of the page here, there's a little square. This is their proposed dedication of a sewer lift station pad, which is as far north as you can get in the basin. It's at the low spot so that everything will flow to it there along the creek. And it's still outside of the critical area buffers. I think it's at least 200 feet from the creek, but it is the low spot for a gravity sewer to flow in that direction. And so we entered into an ILA, an interlocal agreement with Kitsap Transit last year. Kitsap Transit, because they don't have expertise in sewer, they said, the city, if you will have your consultants design this for us, we will happily pay for that work to be done. And so they agreed to pay, I think, up to $750,000 towards this design. The city used its on-call consultant to do pre-engineering work, and we're currently doing a request for qualifications for the full design of that lift station. And I think we spent, about $100,000 so far on the pre-design, and then taking that to own 100% plans is probably another $500,000 to $600,000. And ultimately, Kitsap Transit has said that they intend to build whatever we design, and we just need to tell them what to do, and they will build it as part of their project. And as part of the contract that we entered, they did make a formal written request for a latecomer agreement on that facility. And under state law, as long as you request the latecomer agreement before you start construction on the project that the latecomer would cover, the city is obligated to grant that latecomer agreement, and that means that anybody upstream in the basin who generates sewer is going to pay a latecomer, which is how Kitsap Transit gets reimbursed for building this facility that is ultimately dedicated to the city. And so they can't get reimbursed more than what their actual cost is, and it has to be divided up in a prorated way so that it is either based on ERUs or potentially the distance. Sometimes there's a distance factor when you do that sort of analysis, but ultimately anybody who would develop within, is it 20 years now on a latecomer, Charlie? Anybody who develops within 20 years and connects to sewer that flows into this lift station would pay a latecomer agreement or a latecomer fee towards this agreement. And I think that our code actually allows a reduction in the general facility fee paid if you're paying a latecomer agreement, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's in 1304-040, that if you pay a latecomer agreement for a project that is part of our general facility fee charge, that reduces the amount that you pay to the city, but the city has gotten that facility because the latecomer agreement has been paid.
Nick, so you can take another breath.
Sure.
So I understood that Kitsap Transit was paying for the design, but I missed the part that they're also paying for construction.
They intend to also build it with those building pads don't have any value that they intend to sell.
Right.
If they don't have sewer.
Right. So that, therefore, that makes total sense. Okay. I had gotten the first part, had missed the second part, so that sounds good.
That'll
Yeah,
be a
there's no
subsequent agreement.
Right.
There's no agreement in place that says they will build it. They have indicated that it is their intent to build it, and but we have to have a design so that they know what they're building
Right.
in order to
Understood that.
to go
And a
forward.
cost.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Fred.
Nick, are we losing money on the latecomer agreements?
No, well,
You said they
no.
were paying less, so what, less than what then?
They're paying. I don't believe that we're losing money because we're no longer on the hook to build this facility out of the revenue that we collect. So we're not getting the revenue, but we're also not spending it. So it essentially comes out even. Although there's the potential, I guess, for loss if the cost of the project ended up being more than our assumption in our capital or our general facility fee charge. There could be a small gap there, but we true those things up every few years when we update our facility fees calculations. And given the cost of the Ruby Creek North Lift Station, we know that the number that's in the plan now is probably a little bit low and needs to be adjusted.
Remember, we're not paying the into the latecomer agreement, it's future developers. So if it's, I'm grabbing a number out of there, 500 ERUs, and we heard Kitsap Transit needs one of them, okay, and the developer across the street needs 100 of them, then it's a math equation how much they owe Kitsap Transit, to reimburse Kitsap Transit.
The city
not-
wasn't losing any potential revenue from the lesser of the fee. I was thinking like, oh, they're paying less, but why?
And so the code allows either a latecomer agreement or a general facility fee credit. So if Transit wanted to request a general facility fee credit, they could just assign that credit to those pads and then sell pads that don't have to pay any fee. But in this case, I think a latecomer agreement is probably advantageous for them.
Scott, do you have
Yeah, so on the previous slide, Nick, third bullet down, sewer improvements are needed for regional park. I don't understand the drawing and how that's considered a regional park.
Well, it's identified in our parks plan as the Ruby Creek Regional Park. And so it's regional in the sense that it has a lot of land. It's probably a fairly small park in terms of the improved footprint, but that whole floodplain along Blackjack Creek and Ruby Creek, it's anticipated that there's going to be walking paths that allow people to walk along the river and down to the confluence of the two streams. And it won't be improved in those areas, but it will be accessible to people who want to,
It's a restroom.
enjoy the open space and
What's
the
that?
A
along the
restroom in
highway.
the park
Yeah.
needs sewer service.
No, I get that. It's just what's shown here as a park doesn't rise to what I think is a regional park. But then your explanation about trails going off the site plan and wandering, that sounds fine.
Yeah, we don't have a master park plan for that area yet. We've identified what land would be acquired for the park, but not what improvements would be shown. And this was just Transit's engineer showing some really basic improvements that represent a park.
Thank you.
So Nick, I think I followed along pretty well. I'm just curious. I don't think any developer is an expert in developing lift stations. So, I mean, I don't understand how that got into play. Also, I'm just curious, why are we involved in this? Really at all?
Well, this is Sewer Basin 7 has been part of our sewer service area since at least 2005 and before. But in early plans, and I'm channeling Mark Dorsey here because I always heard him say this was a joint planning area between the county and the city, and it was sort of we're going to figure that out later. And they didn't actually do any planning in the current sewer plans because they didn't know what needed to happen. And so anybody who wanted to develop out here, the private developer would have to build facilities that would be dedicated publicly because private entities can't operate under state WACs now. They cannot operate a lift station that is pumping in our
for sure. Yeah.
So we are involved in this because we have to own the end facilities because this area is below. It has to pump sewage out. There is no gravity flow here unless you went down Blackjack Creek, which would be the only path.
So if I was to build a housing development and the lift station had to be at the bottom of the hill, could I have you guys design that for me? Since you're going to maintain that lift station for me, will you guys design that for me with your consultants as well?
Yeah,
'Cause if so, I'm getting in line for that.
Well, you're paying for it.
It's a pass-through cost. So
We're not paying anything.
Right.
we did that for McCormick, lift stations 1 and 2. And I think the reason that we prefer just to have our engineer do the work is that with McCormick 1, they hired an engineer to design something. Our engineer didn't like it, and there was so much back and forth between the two engineers about they want it to be cheap, we want it to meet city standards. If we let the private engineer design the thing, we are not going to get something that meets our needs, and it's going to be a cheaper facility. And
But
so,
it has to meet your city standards regardless.
Yeah,
though.
and code.
right, and ultimately,
I mean,
we
you're
then
not-
have to pay our consultant to review their work, and that's hugely time-consuming and costly. It's easier just to have our consultants design this.
That sewer plan that Nick had up there that had all of those different projects, those are things that we are committed to doing. We've said we're going to do them. Now, we're not going to get to all of them today, and that's why these agreement, whether it be a latecomers agreement or a sewer credit agreement through a development agreement, because some of these projects we're not going to get to for 7, 8, 10 years out. But somebody wants to do something today, and this particular project, it's 100% developer funded, whether we do it or the developer does it. Okay, and we will allow that developer, whoever, whether in this instance it's another public entity because they have pads that they want to sell to the development community, but we allow for folks to build this stuff for us and then seek either credits from us or latecomer agreement and get repaid from other parties that bring development later. Does that make sense?
It doesn't make sense to me, because they're not building that for us.
No.
They're building.
Yes, they are.
Okay, they're building it so they can develop land and commercial properties. Everything we just listed up here is all commercial properties. Bob Disney's, McCormick down below, it's not commercial, it's residential, but it's developer. So everything that's gonna contribute to this, you're gonna take the Albertsons lift station and contribute to this, which is already there and currently working at capacity, but it's working currently. Anything additionally that we're gonna add has not been developed yet.
And that's why when you look at this chart where the 100% is on there, that, when we get, because we're required to build this under our plan, when we get to it, and it will be funded solely from connection charges. It's 100% paid for by the development community.
You're saying we're required to build it because we put that in our comp plan?
Correct. And our sewer, it's in our
Yeah,
comp
it's
plan.
in our comp plan
it's
and
in
our sewer.
In our sewer plan. So this is something we're committed to doing. When we built these plans, and that's why there's percentages on those. Some facilities, like the Marina Pump Station, is partly being funded by development and growth because it has new capacity, and the ratepayers have to pay for rebuilding, rebuilding existing infrastructure. When it's 100% funded by CFCs, that's ratepayers aren't paying for a dime of that. It's 100% paid for by the connection charges that the development community pays to the city.
And I would add to this discussion that under the Growth Management Act, we are required to have a plan to provide sewer service in all areas of the incorporated city. And so the projects that we've identified here are, we have to have a way to fund them, which we've chosen development pays for this, not ratepayers. And we have to have the projects identified in the plan that are needed to support the development of our city at urban levels of development. And so under GMA, you have to have a plan. Years ago, I remember discussion about possible appeals of city if they don't complete something within 20 years, could they be taken to the hearings, Growth Management Hearings Board? And I believe that's no longer the threat that it once was, but we've always operated under the assumption that under GMA, we have to have a plan for sewer in all areas of the city, and under our capital facilities element, we have to have a fiscally constrained way to pay for that. And so the way that we chose was to say that this project costs, we have a cost estimate, we're gonna make that 100% developer funded so that our rates don't have to increase. And then our sewer general facility fees are some of the highest in the region because of this. But we've had years of inadequate planning of these facilities, and it wasn't until 10 years ago that we said, we don't have a plan for Basin 7. GMA requires us to have a plan to provide sewer in all areas of the city, and Basin 7 is just sort of a question mark that nobody's bothered to figure out. And so we figured it out, we put it in the plan, and we have a financing mechanism, but we can't collect money from developers for a project and then not build it or give them credit for that project. That would be, I think we would be subject to legal challenge for overcharging the developer for sewer charges if we just collected money for a project without actually building it or reimbursing them, not reimbursing, that's a terrible word in the finance department, but giving them credit for towards their CFCs.
Sure, so, go ahead.
I've got other questions. Actually, Mark had his hand raised.
Well,
So Jay?
is yours?
No, what I was going to say, this is very similar in nature to our impact fees, where we said we're not going to charge the existing residents of Port Orchard for improvements that need to be made because of growth. So this is very similar in nature of why developers are funding this, and the city's building it, so we can keep our standards and make sure that they're correct. And we saw that with Lift Station 1 and 2. I remember when we went through that battle with them. So this is a good way to go.
So I'm going to switch gears here. I'd like to know, since we're going to bypass the Albertsons station, what's in the plan for the Albertson station? As an emergency backup? Will it be able to backflow through to it, or?
Albertsons is still going to flow to their own lift station, but I mentioned we have to intercept the flow coming from West Port Orchard, and so I suggested that we may actually connect where this red line becomes a green line, and anything in the red line is going to continue on Sedgwick towards Sydney and then head north to the lift station. This apartment complex, the Sydney apartments, would still flow to Albertsons, and Albertsons would still flow to Albertsons. And there are actually some proposals at the county. They've been tabled until next year, but there's a UGA expansion proposed here. And so it is possible that the county would expand the urban growth area eventually to go south on Sydney. I don't know whether that would be approved, but that Albertsons lift station could then also serve anything south of Albertsons that might come into the city in the future.
Mr. Morrissey.
Well, I just had a question. So they're looking at, because it kind of relates to another thought I had, south, but what about to the west here, right? And to the north there, where we connect other parts that are already part of the city of Port Orchard, you know, and then that leads me to my second question. Is the proposed plans enough for future growth beyond what we're already planning? Right? If we're at a 6-inch and we're going to go to a 10, should we be looking at an 18? I don't know those answers. That's my thoughts.
That's the pre-engineering memo that our consultant, Consor, has prepared for this. So they've given us the specs for what size facility is needed. Now we need to go forward and design it. And I don't know if that memo is final or it's probably almost in a final draft form at this time.
It's not just a 10 either. It's a 6 and a 10.
Right.
We'll have both. And then as far as future planning, it is McCormick East is part of this area on the backside of McCormick Woods. But then it's a rural donut that we can't annex.
Well-
They can't hook to sewer.
So I gather that, but he said they're floating going south with a UGA.
Yeah,
What,
not very
what
far.
would stop them?
And I think the chances of that being approved are low, but there are
Okay.
still a few properties in the city that are south of Albertsons that could develop that would also flow into that facility. But I would not anticipate the UGA being expanded out Glenwood Road further than it is currently. I think if there were going to be changes to the UGA, it would probably happen in other places. You're heading out to the state park there. Our Square Lake, I think, is that owned by the state park or the county?
I think that's the county's.
County, okay. So you got a park there, you got the golf course and casting club. I don't see as much happening out Glenwood Road as I would potentially in some other areas, either, you know, maybe east of Anderson Hill Road going up to the industrial park might be possible. I think anything south of Old Clifton Road is in that donut, and they're pretty opposed to any urbanization in that location.
It's pretty wet in that area. So Heidi had a question, and then I'll come back to you.
Oh, yeah, it was kind of getting answered through stuff. Now, for this lift station, because you need it for the bathrooms for the park and ride, and then Kitsap Transit is going to sell more property for develop, right?
Well, they're going to surplus the remaining property that they have. They bought that property knowing that our code did not allow the park and ride to extend all the way out to the street. It had to be set back off of the road. So they have remnants that they can then surplus, but they are more valuable if they have sewer than if they do not have sewer.
Right. Now, if it wasn't Kitsap Transit buying this, it would be up for sale for another developer.
Right, and the person that owned the largest piece of this property, they actually bought it from Mr. Kruger, came in, and I think they wanted to do storage units, and we told them, we said, hey, you should be aware that Kitsap Transit is talking about locating a park and ride here, first of all, and second of all, storage units aren't allowed per the plan, and you should have thought about that before you bought the property. So, anyway, there was a proposal for retail at one time. Our concept plan, our Ruby Creek plan showed two concepts. One was retail along the street with apartments above retail, and then apartments where the park and ride is, or it was the retail mixed use along the street with the park and ride. So there were two alternatives in the plan that were permissible.
Follow-up question.
Yes, just as long as, it's not impacting the citizens, because, and it sounds like it's not.
You have a follow-up?
No.
Okay, and Jay, you got a follow-up?
I know this is very minor, it's not actually a question. You know, since Safeway's been there for at least 6 months, I don't know if we need to be like X, formerly known as Twitter, and say, you know, Safeway, formerly known as Albertsons, but people do watch our YouTube, and I think we need to kind of switch the nomenclature, at least acknowledge it, please, in the future.
We should probably rename it to something that isn't associated with a retailer.
I'm just saying.
It'll be Kroger soon.
It could be. I'm not debating that. I'm just saying, for nomenclature purposes.
Just what it's called in our plans.
I understand.
And so your good point, we should update that. So any last questions before we get on to our business items?
Good.
All right.
Thank you, Nick.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank you.
Nick.
Thanks, Nick.
All right, we're going to move on to our business items, the first of which is an adoption of an ordinance amending Port Orchard Municipal Code Title 20.200, Construction Code to reflect the updates to the state's building code. Mr. Bond, this is you.
Right, let me just find, I'm still getting out of my presentation here. All right, the Washington State Building Code Council periodically recommends and adopts uniform codes of statewide applicability, collectively referred to as the State Building Code. Consistent with this authority, in 2023, the Code Council approved the adoption of the 2021 versions of the codes comprising the State Building Code with an effective date of March 15, 2024. The City Council adopted Ordinance 13-23 to make a corresponding update to the city's construction code, which adopts by reference the most recent iteration of the State Building Code. Staff has identified amendments necessary to the city's local amendments to the State Building Code, codified at Port Orchard Municipal Code Section 2200.012. These amendments, necessary to match the State Building Code, are, in the opinion of the city's building official, Angela Garcia, appropriate for the implementation of the State Building Code in the city. Staff recommends that the City Council adopt an ordinance amending Port Orchard Municipal Code Section 20, Chapter 20.200 to reflect updates to the State Building Code. And just for your notes, the ordinance contains the clean proposed language for adoption. There is a separate red line document in your packet that shows the changes in red line, and most of them are fairly minor, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt an ordinance amending POMC Chapter 20.200 to reflect the recent changes in the State Building Code.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Trenary, a second by Councilmember Diener. Are there any questions for Mr. Bond related to this? Go
Not a
ahead,
question, I'll
Councilmember.
just point out that this was reviewed by the Land Use Committee as well.
I think it's state law coming down that we're adopting and correcting our code to comply with state law, I believe.
That's correct. And Councilmember Diener, I did want to note that the version of this that went to the Land Use Committee, I caught a handful of additional minor changes in verbiage that have been added to this red line version since you saw it, but they're all pretty minor, and I was just comparing the actual code language to what was in our local amendments and found some things that didn't change this year but were just incorrect from previous iterations.
With that, you'll be voting on adoption of an ordinance amending Port Orchard Municipal Code 20.200 related to updates to the state. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We're to item B, adoption of a resolution approving a contract with Stripe Right Inc. for the 2024 thermoplastic application. Ryan, this is you.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. The City of Port Orchard annually updates the thermoplastic applications within the city. This is the traffic markings at the crosswalks, stop bars, turn arrows that experience heavy wear under traffic. Typically, they were painted in the past, but thermoplastic is the newest technology and has a longer duration. We are seeking council authorization to allow the mayor to execute the contract with Stripe Right Incorporated. Following the procurement policies and procedures, Public Works staff utilized the small works process and invited bids from qualified contractors. Stripe Right was the lowest bid at $37,674, which was deemed responsive and qualified. The Public Works Department confirmed that Stripe Right met all bidding requirements. Staff recommends that the City Council adopt a resolution authorizing the signing of the contract with Stripe Right. And again, this is just the traffic markings. This is not the striping, which will be before you at a later meeting for the long line striping, center line, edge line. So happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Fenton.
I move to adopt a resolution authorizing the mayor to sign a contract with Stripe Right Incorporated for the 2024 thermoplastic application project in the amount of $37,674.
Second.
Councilmember Fenton and a second by Councilmember Rosa Pepe. Do you have any questions of Mr. Ryan on this matter?
Actually,
Go ahead.
one comment. I know we've had a pretty good working relationship with Stripe Right, so that was nice to see. Any idea why the difference in the bid was so great? Because that's significant.
Stripe Right was being competitive. I think familiarity with the organization and knowing what the challenges and mobilization is like puts them at advantage as far as when they're bidding the project.
Like I said, we've worked with them before, so I'm not sorry to see them be the low bidder. Thank you.
Yeah, they've done this work for us for a number of years. Councilmember Warden?
I thought it was location as well for them. as
I'm
far
not
as-
familiar where their location is,
Yeah,
but
they're local, and I also think that they're doing so much work right now around here that they can probably come in at that lower price and keep doing very well. I'm also thankful that you guys are doing the thermoplastic instead of the paint. It's gonna last significantly longer, so.
Morrissey?
Yeah, I was just curious. I was looking through the packet, and I see where they give a breakdown of units, but I was curious, where is the statement of work? Where will be having these applications? Is that every crosswalk in the city, or is there a certain statement of work that we looked at for this?
there is a schedule, and I would have to pull that up separate, and I can provide that at a later time.
So it wasn't in the packet. Okay. Just making sure there. And then two, help define for a guy who has no clue what thermoplastic is. Like, I don't have to worry about somebody coming at us that there's environmental impact or anything like that because it's plastic.
It is a plastic material that's polymer based. It is put down. There's two methodologies how they would place it. Much of the time, these come in stencils. So, like your turn arrows would be coming in pieces, and they are heated up. You want the pavement to be clean and dry, and they'll put it down with a torch. Another application you'll see it is where it's in a kettle, and they'll actually pour it.
You'll see them come in and grind down the asphalt a little bit to make it really smooth surface, real clean. And then they'll come through, they'll lay it down with a torch, and they'll go over it. It lasts significantly longer. Yeah.
It's so durable.
But it's all safe, right? We don't have to worry about
Using it for years.
3M things and
It's all over
things
the
that are,
peninsula.
okay, okay, perfect.
And
Thank you.
it doesn't come off like paint does, so the retention's there, so you're not like losing it into the streets or the stormwater.
It's much more visible. That's why we use it in turn arrows, crossings, the little, little chunky things that cross an intersection.
So maybe a follow-up question on that, knowing that there is a statement of work and not knowing what that is here in the packet. It said it was budgeted. I don't know what that budget was. Knowing this bid, can we get more of it done? Can we use the full budget to make sure that,
We may have to amend the contract if that was the case. Availability is a big piece of it.
okay,
So,
thank you.
Like Councilmember Warden mentioned, local work, economies of scale, this is the slot that they can come in, so it's everybody's advantage.
Thank you.
And you can get a kind of an idea of what they're talking about doing on page 187, where they show how many crosswalk bars they plan on.
Yeah, so that's the one I was looking at, but I didn't know like where in the city we were getting that done.
Everywhere they're needed.
Thanks.
So locations will be presented at the pre-construction, and so it's going to be a very busy map location, so it's not included in the packet.
Real quick, do you know I don't know, the life expectancy of one of those? Is it 3 to 5?
I believe it's 3 to 5 years.
And it depends on traffic.
Yeah.
And on that, but the one thing is they've, to answer your question, it's come a long ways. Because when I saw it put down the first time 20 years ago, it was almost like kind of a slick surface, and that was some issues, but they've made really improvements in it, so it does last a lot longer than paint and a lot nicer, more visible, as the mayor said.
And it really depends the life on it too, depending on this traffic, because the cars are driving over it. So a high volume road, we're going to wear it out faster than some place that doesn't have as much traffic.
And most importantly, you're only doing the work every 3 to 5 years instead of every single year, so.
Dog piling on. Would we do an application like this every 3 to 5, hopefully 5, and then do striping on other years?
Striping happens every year because it's water-based and it doesn't last.
Every year.
Yeah.
But we're not restriping every year, right? right?
Yes.
We're restriping the entire city every year.
Every year.
Yeah.
Okay.
We were prohibited, local agencies were prohibited with the stormwater permit from using oil-based paint. So all long line striping previously was oil-based, and so stormwater requirements require everything to be water-based now. So the
They just
duration's
don't, they
not
don't
there.
last as long and they fade, so we got to do it every year. All right, want any more rabbit holes?
Yeah, of course. If you're going to invite, for sure, right? Would you do the striping with the thermoplast?
Different
Okay,
different
no.
equipment.
Okay, yeah, just question, curious. Somebody who
And we used to have the county do our striping, but they would do all of their roads first. And we had a year where the county, because it has to be
ran out of time.
perfect weather to do it, and they ran out of time, and we didn't get striped. So now we contract it out, and don't worry about whether the county has capacity or not. So, all right, any last questions? Any more rabbit holes? No? All right, you'll be voting on approval of a contract with Stripe Right Inc. for the 2024 thermoplastic application. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the contract has been approved. We're to item C, which is adoption of a resolution approving a contract with Commercial Electric Facilities contract with Puget Sound Energy for the McCormick Woods Well 11 site. Mr. Ryan, that's you.
So the McCormick Woods Well Number 11 site improvement project is a priority for the City of Port Orchard's Public Works Department. With wells 1 and 2 set for decommissioning, well 11 needs upgrades as it will be the sole water source for the McCormick Woods well field. The project includes a pump station upgrade, VFD booster pumps, yard piping, tank restoration, and preparation for future water filtration systems. Funding was secured through a loan from the Washington State Department of Health, and JMG contractors were contracted for the construction. Puget Sound Energy will handle the installation of an underground line extension and transformer conversion for the electrical improvements. Although performed by PSC, the work is considered a public work project subject to bidding requirements. The city is recommending that they approve a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a commercial electric facilities contract with PSC for the project. Additionally, this easement is for a previously, this well field was developed by McCormick and was previously owned by the McCormick Woods organization. So this would be, it was a single service provider that also provided service to the golf course. So this is segregating the services, so we will have our own dedicated service for well 11. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Rosapepe.
Mayor, I move to adopt a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a commercial electric facilities contract in the amount not to exceed $70,000 with Puget Sound Energy to design and install electrical infrastructure for the McCormick Woods Well Number 11 site improvement project.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Rosapepe, a second by Councilmember Chang. Do you have any questions for Mr. Ryan? Kind of need power at the well site.
Just curious, is there a time frame on this contract with PSC at all? Have any kind of an idea when this is going to be done?
Schedule, the easement should be in front of you for the next meeting for this work. I would anticipate it could be a 30 to 60 day timing. It's going to be, we don't have any windstorms this time of year, so hopefully things go a little bit better.
All right, thank you.
Other questions? All right, you'll be voting on a resolution approving a contract with Puget Sound Energy for the McCormick Woods 11 site. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Unopposed? The resolution has passed unanimously. We're to item D, which is rather exciting. A approval of an MOU with the Port Orchard Rotary Club for funding related to Gibbons Park. Mr. Bond, this is you.
All right, thank you. And this is an exciting topic. The city received a grant from the Recreation Conservation Office to rehabilitate and upgrade city facilities at Gibbons Park. The Port Orchard Rotary Foundation offered to raise funding to provide the required match for the city project. The RCO grant provides the city with up to $176,400 out of a total $294,000 required for the project. The city's share of the cost is $117,600. Any costs beyond $294,000 would be paid by the city, but no additional costs are expected at this time. If the project costs less than $294,000, the state funding is reduced proportionately with a 60-40 split as outlined in the city's grant agreement. The Port Orchard Rotary Foundation has been raising funds for about a year and has collected up to this point $53,366. The city is aiming to put the park project out to bid later this summer and is currently incurring costs related to project design. The city and Rotary wish to memorialize the terms of the donation in a memorandum of understanding. The MOU outlines the timing of the first payment as well as opportunities for subsequent transfers if additional funds are raised. The Rotary will transfer the funds collected to date on June 3rd, 2024, and will continue raising funds and will transfer additional funds on or before August 1st, 2024. The MOU provides that the city will provide and post a sign at the park as part of the project in recognition of the donation by Port Orchard Rotary. Staff recommends approval of the MOU as presented.
Councilmember Diener.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve an MOU with the Port Orchard Rotary Foundation as presented.
Second it.
Motion by Councilmember Diener, a second by Councilmember Fenton. And I know we have two members of the
Yeah, do we
Morning
need to
Rotary
recuse
Club.
ourselves?
You don't personally benefit from this. I mean, you could if you wanted to,
I think
but,
we asked that before.
and
Yeah,
I'll
I
defer to
think,
the attorney.
I've recently learned that there is an aspect of it that if you're a board member, the recommendation is that you recuse yourself. So even though you're not fiscally receiving funding, as long as we keep a quorum, yes, that would be the recommendation.
Oh, if I'm a board member?
Yeah.
Yes.
either
Oh,
one of
yeah,
you
I'm
are
a
board-
chair, membership chair, so that's a board
so
member.
You are a board member.
So are you going to be?
Yeah, I'm not currently, but I'm
Oh,
on
yes,
the
not yet,
slate,
not yet.
so.
So based on that advice,
Which club is this? Is this the morning club?
morning
no,
club.
the morning club.
Morning club, okay. That's trying
Yes.
to differentiate.
So based on the advice
Oh,
of
it's
the
not the
attorney,
Rotary.
Yes.
as a board member, you should recuse yourself and step into the back until we.
Okay, sure.
So it would be members of the Rotary Foundation Board.
That's
Which is
foundation.
one of the same.
okay.
It'd be the same board.
Okay, okay, sorry.
Yep,
Now, I don't
Thank you.
think my term takes effect till July 1.
correct.
You can stay.
Okay,
Yeah, she's the current board.
current, I'm not,
Yeah, yeah.
Need a new second?
Yes, we do. We have
okay.
a motion by Councilmember Diener.
I'll second.
Okay. And Councilmember Morrissey seconds. Questions, and I'm glad we addressed that.
I have a question, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
So, just in reading this, roughly between the RCO and the Rotary, we're about $60,000 short at this point in time. The Rotary is going to continue to raise funds, I understand. And so for NOAA, is this, or the mayor, is the remaining 60,000 or less currently, was that currently in our budget? Or is
It's
this,
a bake sale.
it's a bake sale later?
No, it's not.
I know
We,
that.
we can,
Well, I mean, is it something that we might have a budget amendment later on?
yes.
Okay,
We would if we have to put additional city
That's what I was-
resources to
Okay,
it.
that's it. So we're good.
And following up on that, are we hoping that they're going to come up with the entire match?
That would be lovely, but it's
Okay.
based on
But if they
fundraising
can't,
effort.
then we would have to make up the difference.
Correct.
Okay.
It'd be
So-
foolish on our part.
So they're not
to-
done fundraising, are they?
I thought we had more than that, but I know we're not done. No, there's another event that we're planning up at the park. I think a challenge has been thrown down to the afternoon club and some pickleball challenges, so there's some things going on.
Yeah, there's, could you, and it would be foolish on our part. I mean, hopefully they raise all of it, but if we're $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 short, we've got a $300,000 project here. We've got to figure it out.
And that wasn't my question. My question is just, where are we with this? What does it look like our share will be? And would it be a budget amendment? And I'm very comfortable that the bang for the buck, so to speak, for 40,000 is huge. If that's what we got to come up with, I'm good.
Well, and keep in mind that we don't have a final engineer's estimate for the cost to build this, and we have to put it out to bid and actually get a bid. So it may come in over our estimate, it may come in under, we're not sure.
If I have to go to a few more crab feeds, I'll go to a few more
You
crab feeds.
take one for the
I
team.
don't know.
There you go.
Whatever.
Yeah, and answer specifically, we do have $45,500 in our current budget.
Okay.
That we put in to help cash flow this project until we could get to some Rotary money as well as RCO, because again, both are not available to us at this moment in time. So we do have some money in there, and yes, I would expect a budget amendment to come forward in June-ish with other budget amendments to true up the funding source. And again, in the budget process, we're using what we call the rec reserve.
Right.
It's monies we collected over the years from our admission tax, which we are no longer collecting since the theater has shut down. And those are restricted funds, so there's only certain things we can use it for. And so during the budget process, we thought Givens Park was appropriate and would be a good addition to the community. And so we committed those dollars for that project.
Excellent summation. Thank you, Noah.
Other questions? All right, you'll be voting on approval of an MOU with the Port Orchard Rotary Club for funding related to Givens Park. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed?
Please go get Heidi.
All right, the MOU is approved, so Heidi can join us again.
I'll go to the next fundraiser.
How's the sun out there?
Nice.
We're at item E now, adoption of a resolution approving a contract with Transportation Solutions, Inc. for a transportation impact fee study and rate schedule update project. Mr. Bond, this is you.
All right. Before the City Council is a resolution approving a contract with TSI for a transportation impact fee study and rate schedule update. The reason that we're bringing this forward now is that we are nearing completion of our 2024 comprehensive plan, and in that plan we are identifying some additional transportation projects, and we're also updating all of the cost estimates because the estimates in our current comprehensive plan are pretty out of date, and we've seen a lot of construction inflation in that time. And so once we adopt the new comprehensive plan, we will have a new list of projects which differs from our currently adopted transportation impact fee rate schedule and study. So the city, we did a professional services consultant selection off of our consultant roster. We asked 3 qualified firms that we know do this kind of work to submit proposals. Only one of those firms replied and came to us with a proposal for $34,990. And so the staff recommendation is to approve the contract for the impact fee study and rate schedule project as presented.
Councilmember Warden.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a professional services agreement with Transportation Solutions for the transportation impact fee study and rate schedule.
Second.
A motion by Councilmember Warden, a second by Councilmember Chang. Questions of Mr. Bond? Go ahead.
When was the last time we did a study like this? And with an update to the comp plan, are we over our skis?
No, this is, so TSI is a consultant on the comp plan team, so they're already familiar with which projects are being added. This is going to be a pretty easy thing for them to put together, and they will bring forward presentations to the Transportation Committee and the City Council as part of this process and walk you through the math of how we get to the ultimate fee recommendation. The other thing that we're doing as part of this transportation plan update is we're realizing that you're allowed to, when the city grows and needs to expand its transportation facilities beyond roads, like our public works facilities where we store trucks and snowplows, the cost of expanding the system is something you could collect an impact fee for. You can't replace equipment, but we're also looking to add those types of things to this fee to make sure that development is paying for all aspects of our transportation system, not just the road and intersection and sidewalk improvements, which have been in the program so far. So it's going to be a little bit more holistic look at our transportation program and how to fund that.
Ultimately, that plan comes back to you guys get to touch it, and then it'll recommend a fee that you guys have to approve.
And when was the last time, approximately?
We adopted the last one in January of 2021, but the study was actually written in 2020 and was sidelined by the pandemic, so we were slow in getting that implemented. And they recommend that we do these every 3 to 5 years, and so it's been a little over 3 years now.
Thank you.
Other questions? Motion and a second on the floor. You'll be voting on adoption of a resolution approving a contract with Transportation Solutions, Inc. for a transportation impact fee study and rate schedule update project. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. The contract is approved. We are to our last business item, item F, which is the approval of the April 16th council work study minutes. And I see Councilmember Rosa Pepe is likely to abstain, but is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I motion to approve the work study session meeting minutes of April 16th as presented.
Second it.
A motion by Councilmember Morrissey, a second by Councilmember Fenton. Any corrections you see in those minutes? All right. Hearing none. All in favor of approving the work study minutes from April 16th, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And one abstention by Councilmember
abstain.
Councilmember Rosa Pepe. All right, we have one discussion item. Oops, I'm sorry.
Apologies. The advice I gave earlier with regards to the need to recuse was incorrect because the contract was giving the city money, not Rotary. So I apologize for that error. I blame the traffic. So to the extent Robert's Rules allows council members to supplement their vote post-decision. So if the councilwoman wanted to now record a vote on that item, that would be procedurally proper for that to occur. So apologies for that.
Do you wish to vote on that item?
Yeah.
And how would you vote on that item?
Yes. I know, I think I forgot about me back there.
All right, so we had it backwards. All right, so.
I want to hear everything again. No.
We're $40,000 short. We've got some funds in the budget.
And Rotary might give a little bit more too, hopefully.
Correct.
Keep raising funds.
Hope so.
Yes.
That was the long and the short of it. All right, so we're to our one discussion item, which is the council's guiding principle. It says mayor's, but this isn't my discussion item. It's really Councilmember Fenton asked that this be brought forward. We have our guiding principles that are on our agenda and over here on the wall. And I open this up for you guys to discuss this, and they're your guiding principles, and I'll read what they are.
Excuse me for a minute. I'm going to stand for a minute, and that's nothing or anything. I just need to stand for a second as a break. So
Yeah.
please let the discussion go on, but I just wanted to let you know that.
Okay, so
Take
who
care of
would
that
like
knee.
to start this discussion? Councilmember Fenton?
Sure, I will. Yes, I wanted to change those guiding principles. And on the first one, are we raising the bar? I always thought that we should finish that. It sounded like an open-ended, and I feel us as city council members that we could raise the bar a little better. So I'm kind of suggesting, are we raising the bar with communication within our city? And then the second one, are we honoring the past but not living in the past?
Hold on.
Wait.
Sorry, I'm trying to write these down as you're.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Okay, do you want me to say that one over again?
Please.
So the first one was,
Are we raising the bar with communication within our city?
okay.
'Cause I think that's something we should be working on, more communication.
Okay.
And I like the second one, so we can leave that one there. Are we honoring the past but not living in the past? And then for the third one, I like, are we building connections with outside partners and within our city? Because when I read that, it sounds like partners outside of the city limits. And so are we building connections with outside partners and within our city? And then with the last one is the decision-making process being impartial? And the reason why I picked impartial, I was never into that diversity, equity, and inclusion. I didn't really think that it really had a place for us city council and with our constituents and with our community. So that sounds like something more in hiring someone. We were voted by the people, and so that one, it just never computed with me, but I like, is the decision-making being impartial? And what is impartial? It means just treatment or without favorism or discrimination. And that's why I chose the word impartial, because that impacts all that. And it's, that sentence is short and sweet.
So
Councilmember Rosebeck, go ahead.
just a little bit of feedback. I think that using the word communication in the first bullet actually limits what we're trying to do on that. I think there might be a better word to look at. Are we raising the bar? Totally is not a good word, but just limiting it to communications it needs to be more open-ended.
Yeah,
okay?
That was my
So-
first observation.
I'm okay
on
with that,
one,
yeah.
on that one. The last one, well, impartial, I'm kind of open-ended on that one. However, I would like to continue with the diversity, equity, and inclusion, not because it's today's buzzword, but because of the fact that we as a city are trying to move forward with that. And right now, quite frankly, we're pretty homogeneous as a city, and I think that we need to be more welcoming by using the language that everybody knows that they're welcome. So that's my feedback on that one.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that. That's why, you know, impartial means all that.
So I'm going to let others speak here. So,
Oh, yes.
Councilmember Diener, did you have?
So I shared, my first observation was on number 1, where you mentioned communication, and I think that's limiting. So I encourage you to explore more on that. I have to think about number 3. I'm kind of maybe impartial on that. But in terms of the 4th bullet, I really like the way it lives now. And we've had lots of presentations. I've seen several presentations on DEI, and I think it's important that we acknowledge that rather up front. And then my final comment is, you know, when we take these up for consideration, maybe we should break these out by individual votes, so they're not lumped together.
So I'm hearing, I've heard a couple votes. Let's hear from others. Go ahead, Councilman Morrison.
Sure. Thank you for putting time and effort and thought into this, Heidi. I have some tweaks I might suggest on my own. I've heard the mayor say this, and I like the way it is on 1. Are we raising the bar in all of our actions? Might be my suggestion for bullet 1. I too are fully on board with. I think that's our best one is item number 2 there. Are we honoring the past but not living in the past? I couldn't have come up with anything better. Item 3. Are we building positive connections with all? Might be my suggested edit if you want to change that. And then item 3, I kind of got to side with some of the guys here. I kind of like the way it's written. I'd be open for some other discussion, but you know, in my work in chamber, boards that I've served with in the past, in fact, our chamber board has, not just the board, the chamber as an organization has a diversity statement right alongside our mission statement. So I think it's important to have something listed. I'd be open to discussing what those changes may look like, but I'm okay with the way it's stated today.
That was number 4 and number 3.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah, comments or
Please.
Well, I kind of like the open-endedness of item 1, but I also like the addition to the Councilman Morrissey said in all of our actions. That still leaves it open-ended so that it can be working within our citizens, raising the bar within the town and outside the town and in everything we do. So I'm comfortable either way with that. I do like topic number 2, the way it's written. Number 3, I don't mind it as it sits, as well as number 4. I'm comfortable with it as they sit.
If I might interject, the reason I say that at the beginning, because that in the actions we're about to take this evening, I think not just the first one, all 4 of them. We need to reflect on in our actions on all of these things. Are we being inclusive? Are we building connections? So, you know I don't have a vote in this, but I would caution you not to limit that to the first one, I guess.
No, I just think I think that further describes what bar we're trying to raise when I say in all of our actions, right? I don't disagree with your statement. I just think it clarifies that a little better.
I agree.
I have, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, please. I'll finish. Go ahead.
I just, you know, there's been some discussion about number 3, but what if it just read, are we building connections with partners? So that addresses your concern, Heidi.
Yeah. I mean, it can get shortened, but yeah, because to me, this just reads outside partners, and it's like, we are working inside businesses, all kinds of people, you know, our constituents, so I like it where it's, you know, encompassing more of that.
I wanted to go last because I kind of like taking it all in.
Fred hasn't gone yet.
Oh, geez. No,
Should I go first?
But I kind of like, because as I'm listening, I'm basically picking up and putting down, you know, what you guys are saying, and changing my mind by the second. So I'm pretty good at that. The raising the bar, I like that, because that should be our goal. It is a little open-ended, but I don't want to remove that. Maybe if we could end it with something. Number 2 is really strong. That's a home run, that statement right there. Number 4, I think I'm pretty good at reading the community out there, and that's pretty important in our community, in today's world that we're living in right there. I'm not saying that that's 100% me, but that probably is more important than what some might think. So I'd like to leave that, but definitely 1, I'd like to try to have a little bit onto that one, and I definitely don't want to change number 2. So, and the last part, what you guys said about number 3, that last part that Scott just said.
Yeah, I like that.
I like that.
Yeah.
That was
Striking outside.
yeah, that was great. Yeah.
How about with our partners?
Hey, Mayor, could I offer a suggestion on that one that ties to our comp plan, and that is that our major theme of the comprehensive plan of the city is to build connections, which are both physical connections, connections to the environment, connections to the water, transportation connections. And so I would suggest, I think outside partners narrows connections, just like the suggestion on raising the bar for communication narrows that principle. I would suggest breaking that into 2, saying, are we building connections throughout the community? And then separately, are we working collaboratively with our partners? Would be a good way to broaden the connections theme while retaining the partnership piece.
Way to shorten that?
Yeah, they're supposed to be bullets.
So are we building connections throughout the community? And are we working collaboratively with our partners?
And collaboratively.
That'd be a separate bullet then, so we would be adding one. Was Nick suggesting? Nick doesn't have a vote, but we're.
Well, if we said just a word, if we stopped just the word community and left out the second piece of it, that does cover everybody. We just shorten it to communities.
Listen to Fred.
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry, Fred.
That's all right. I didn't want to be the last one, but that's
But you
okay. I think I remember creating the guiding principles, and I thought they encapsulated the retreat very well. So I thought it served the purpose there. But every time when I hear it before a meeting, I'm thinking, it just sounds a little vague. And like the DEI one at the end, I'm thinking, that's starting to me to sound like jargon, and it's not something really meaningful. And so I'm glad that we got to revisit, you know, like what's our intent? What do we mean? I'm okay with the first one. I do agree that your original suggestion did seem to limit what we were raising the bar on. An alternative could also be just, are we raising the bar with our standards? But I don't know that we need the extra verbiage there. So I'm comfortable with that, maybe with adding a couple words. Yeah, the second one, I don't know how we could change that, and I think we'd like that one.
You like that?
The third one, I was thinking, you know, when we're adding to it and subtracting, we could also just say something like, are we building positive new connections or something? Because I think that's what we're trying to establish, like things we don't have, are we? So, and I'm not saying that that's the exact words it should be, but something like that. It could probably be improved. The last one, I actually like what Rob said. It was like, basically, are we being inclusive in what we're thinking? You know, we don't have to, sometimes when I hear the 3 words together, I'm just thinking like, You know, and I understand, maybe they're said too quickly. Maybe you need to say them slower, Rob, or something, because, when I hear diversity, equity, inclusion, I'm thinking, oh, DEI again, okay.
You talk
that's enough.
fast.
Yeah,
I own
so,
that.
I agree that, I think our intent is there. I'm just not sure it's worded the most perfect way. But
So I got Scott, but I want to point out here, Nick's suggestion here, are we building connection throughout the community? The connections are so important. AWC, PSRC, these are entities and groups that we need to be connected. Without a doubt, we need to be connected in our community, but we need to be connected outside our community, because that's where our funding comes from. That's where our advocacy comes from at the state and the national level too. So I ask you to think bigger than that. So, Councilmember Diener?
I just was going to suggest that maybe we come up with some ideas and we send them to you so that we can see them in a table. I don't know how we're going to get through this.
I think this is done here at a work study. It's got to be
Work
done.
study, that's fine, but
It's
I'd
got
like-
to be done. It's got to be done here.
Sure. It'd be nice if we could have.
Because otherwise, we're doing a chain meeting.
No, I didn't mean that. Just
Yeah.
if people have ideas, send them to you so we can look at them all together at a work study, so that I'm not trying to track, okay, we've had 3 different versions of number 1. Where are we landed on that?
I think, let's give this another 10 minutes, and if we can't get close in 10 minutes, then we'll move on, because we've got other things to get done here tonight too. So,
But
Councilmember
I had
Rose-
one more thing to
Okay.
say is the DEI world is something that I've learned more about from my daughter and my son than anybody else. And so while that may not be as necessarily important to some people, it's really important to our youth. And so I think that is a way to embrace.
No, I'm not going to do this justice, but Debbie, could you step to the microphone and talk a little bit, about what we're doing, with the Inclusion Commission? And Councilmember Trenary sent me an article, and then Debbie shared the same article with me just last week. And believe it or not, we're kind of leading the charge in this area. And so Debbie, I'm not going to do this justice, so if you could speak to that article.
And you think I am? No, thank you for the opportunity to speak. It's hard to sit there and not say anything because, well, there's lots of thoughts. Councilmember Chang, you're absolutely right. DEI, to some individuals and a growing number of companies, when you read the research, it does have a negative connotation, right? And a lot of places are dropping DEI programs for funding and other reasons. But what the research also says is if you don't have an inclusive environment, an inviting environment, private organization, you're going to fail. You're not going to have good employees that are going to support you. And to Councilmember Fenton's point, it's not about HR. Right?
No, it's about my constituents.
And who ultimately we want our community members working for us, but HR does not control that. Every manager sitting up here hires their employees. Every manager sitting here wants to have different opinions in their staff, right? That's how we learn, that's how we develop, that's how we get better. And so I actually just jotted a note. And I haven't put really that much thought into this, but is the decision-making process building a diverse, equitable, and inclusive community? I think that's ultimately what you're trying to do. It's big, it's broader, we have lots of wrongs to try to make right as a society, and we can't do that here, but we can show that we care and we're trying and we're aware of those things.
I can get on board with that sentence. I like that one better than the one right here. I do. I like that. I mean, because it sounds like a lot of people want to keep that, but I like the way you just said that for us as, as we work with our constituents, as we work with our city. That made more sense to me.
Right, because keep in mind, you're the policymakers. What you decide drives the actions of all of these staff members, right? And our staff, I just was at a conference last week, and pardon a little bit of the language, but the presenter said, if you act like jerks and, his word, jackasses, sitting up there on the dais, you're going to water down the applicant pool, right? Because everybody's looking to you and your actions to determine if they want to be part of this organization.
Chief can speak directly to that. Most of his candidates are watching our meetings before they interview with us. So Chief.
That's correct. So all of us in this room are leaders in our own, and you as electeds, now depending on how you look at it, I don't look at leadership as being on top of anything, but I have candidates that search me out on YouTube. I have candidates that find police officers in the community and ask, what's it like working here? And I have candidates that watch this council. And we have, no disrespect to my other partners, but we've been able to absolutely diversify our workforce because we are open, honest, inclusive, and treat people equitably. And we put out an amazing amount of information about who we are and why we do what we do. And I have candidates that come to me, and once they've done the first initial interview, they pull their applications from other places. And that's a risky proposition because I may not hire you. But they look to what you do up on the dais. They look to what you say up on the dais, and they look to how you interact with each other, because they also know they're working for you. And I can also tell you, I know that about the only time you see uniforms in here is when we're doing a commissioning. I have staff that regularly watch these council meetings. And they take I'm not the only one that has influence on their behavior. And it's important to me. Absolutely, diversity, equity, and inclusion, however you want to frame it, however you want to phrase it, but that is incredibly important. And I've been a chief for 7 months when George Floyd hit. And being able to go from what we had then to what we have now is because of the way the council has supported us, the way that the council has faced outward, and the way that they have said that this is what we want. We want a community that's inclusive. We want a community that is equitable and is diverse, and we have to reflect that in all of our departments, not just the police department. You know, and Mr. Turner, when he was here the other week, we have a very strong partnership with him because I believe that, my organization believes that, and we say it in our guiding principles. And to our community, they expect that of us. There are absolutely some constituents out there, Ms. Fenton, that don't agree with that. But do we work for the entire community, or do we work for some of them?
The entire community.
Correct. And so if we're going to say we're going to work for the entire community, this is a representative democracy. We have to do those just by the definition of what our government is. So I really, truly do appreciate the conversation, the opportunity to speak to this. I'm passionate about it because I want my profession to be successful, and I can't if I don't have those within my department. So again, thank you for allowing me to share.
So I think Debbie, really, if we could slide down to that last one, what was it? Could you say that again,
Yes,
Debbie,
that
so
last
Brandy can
sentence.
type it?
Okay. Fellow council members Chang, slow it down. Is the decision-making process building a diverse, equitable, and inclusive community?
We put her on the spot all the time. Every Wednesday morning at the manager's meeting, she types, and we ridicule her.
I can get behind that.
Yep.
Type in that, and we can all. What do you guys think of that?
Yeah. Absent some comments, but.
I would agree with Scott that we take these like one at a time and
Which one?
And on that. And I would like to just share for a second that when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and you know, I'm not going to beat around the bush, and I appreciate everybody giving me a second or two. I'm the oldest guy here, and when I joined the Navy, there was no women in the Navy. Filipinos, even Filipino Americans, were not allowed to be anything but stewards. We had almost 0 black officers, and my grandfather, who was Hispanic, and he was an officer in the Navy, and one day I asked him why he stopped wearing his guayabera, which is an ornamental shirt, and he said, I stopped wearing it when somebody asked me where my barber shop was. So my point of the story is, in my youthful years, I've seen a lot of change. And somebody said one time after George Floyd riots, they should be happy how long, with all the progress that's been made talking about African Americans. And I looked at them and I said, why should they be happy that it took 50 years? And my point of the story is, if we don't continue to beat the drum, then we're regressing. And I'm sorry, I feel very strongly about this part, is to a school district in Virginia just decided to go back to 2 Confederate generals' names after they changed it 2 years ago. And that's nothing more than going backwards. And I'm saying that right now, if we don't embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion in our message, we're going backwards. And I don't want to go backwards. That's it.
Well, yeah,
I'm done.
no, and I appreciate that, and it sounds like you guys like those words, and I'm fine with that. I like that last sentence, because now it's reflecting me and my community, my constituents, and even, I'm a servant here. That's why I'm on city council. I'm a servant. Yes, I'm a leader, but I'm a servant first, then a leader, and I look at everybody equal. And that's why I came up with the word impartial. I'm no better than anybody, and we're all equal.
Let's see if we can wrap this up, and maybe we can come to some consensus. If we can't quickly, then we're going to park this to a work study. And maybe we'll at least be able to refine this so the discussion isn't so broad next time we bring it back.
I think I heard that with respect to what you read off, that we're in general agreement on that.
Yeah,
So
I think we did the
but we've
first
got,
one.
All of
so,
Yeah.
is there general, okay, so let's work backwards from the bottom.
Yeah.
Is that bottom one the home run?
I like it.
Yeah.
I think we all
Everybody
like it. Yeah, I think we all like that one.
I can live with it. I can do consensus. Can you live with it? I can live with it.
Okay.
Well,
And
I
we
think it's an
know that we
improvement,
didn't want to
actually.
change the honoring the past, living the past. Nobody spoke to that, so
No.
you can highlight that we're going to leave that alone. Are we raising the bar? There were a couple ideas about that. I think I heard arguments to be more broad than just communication in all of our actions, but I once again argue, I would like to open with, are we in the actions we're about to take, and then it's these 4 or 5 things, whatever they are, versus just this first one. But if you guys want it to be only the first one, then they're your guiding principles.
Yeah, I would like to change it. I like what Council Member John said, and Diener said another just short word. Every time I look at, are we raising the bar? You know what it says in my head? No, because I know we can do a better job. And so I would like it to be not just a open-ended sentence.
I would actually agree with that, but I might even think, what if we said, are we raising the bar with our actions?
That was one of them.
I like saying all of our actions. It means that we look at everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
And not just, could be some things.
Okay,
Randy, you don't
no,
need
I
to
can
take
live with that. In either case, though, I think it does offer subject of or whatever you want to call it. Because if we say, are we raising the bar, it does seem to be lacking something.
Other component.
Yeah, grammatically, it's probably the subject
So
of the
is that
object of
the
preposition or
version
whatever.
that we're liking is, are we raising the bar in all of our actions? I'm hearing a number of people speak to that.
I can live with it.
Okay, so that's the
I
middle
could live
one.
with that.
So that's in all of our actions, correct?
In all of our action.
Okay, now, this is going to be the partners one. This is going to be probably the toughest one, and whether we have to come back to this or not. So are we building connections with outside partners isn't liked as well. Nick's had presented a version because he thinks it plays into our comp plan. I would argue it's bigger. It's our community and beyond our community. So how do we get there?
Are we building connections inside and outside our community? That's not the right words that I'm looking for.
Are we building connections within and outside of our community?
Or are we building positive connections?
Yep.
And our
I like that.
Within our community and outside partners?
We're gonna assume positive. I mean, we're gonna.
Are we?
Okay.
Am I gonna assume them? Yeah. I'm gonna read it off that. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to use that word.
No, I'm just trying. That's why I think positive needs to be in there, because I think we may build a connection with somebody
But it
that
might not be
isn't.
very positive.
I mean, I can think of some folks that have been here to speak to us that hasn't been positive.
Okay, are we building positive, the word positive, are we building positive connections
Within
within our community and our,
And with.
and
our-
outside
and
partners.
with outside partners?
That's too long.
Really? Let's see how long it is.
That
Put it-
top one says
It might not
all.
be- It's no longer than the fourth or the one.
Are we building positive new connections?
Noah, did we budget for a new
With
board?
who? People. Okay, I just asked.
It's
Okay,
no longer
so-
than the one below it, just FYI.
What?
No, the last one's really long, but the
But-
one above it is shorter.
Look at the one that's highlighted below. It's about the same length.
About the same length.
We don't have to say new, do we? How about just, are we building positive connections?
The last one.
There's the last one. There's no new. in it.
Oh,
How
I
about-
see,
can I
I
just-
saw, oh.
Within
Can
our
I-
community
that doesn't
and
mean
without,
that
so,
it
Brandon, can you highlight that one so that
Right.
we're all focused on that one?
Can I just make some friendly amendments to that? Are we
You might be
building?
able to.
Are we building positive connections with our community and outside partners?
The last one?
Or outside, yeah, we can take that.
But
Yeah,
not
I
with.
like that.
Outside, I like that, a
Within our
little
community.
shorter.
With our community and outside partners.
Yeah.
With our community.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Shortens it a little bit.
Yep, I like that.
Okay, look at that. Only 6 more minutes than I thought.
Yeah. Do we want, can we sit on this for,
Why don't we bring it back as a discussion item the end of the month?
if you don't mind?
Yeah,
I
okay.
appreciate that.
So why don't we clean this up to Brandy and we'll bring it back as a discussion item on the 28th? Because we're packed next, the work study.
I just want to say, Chief Brown, what you said is, that's really true to today, the world we're in with employment and whatnot. I don't think it's any more true than today, trying to hire people that, when they're checking you out, that interviews are a mutual thing. You know, in the past, people, I think, felt they go to an interview and they answer questions and it's a one-way street. And today, people are doing their research and there's so many avenues to do that. And so it's really important for us to have everything in place and act professional and present the city in a good light that they're going to see. So I really appreciate you making those comments.
Yeah, and if you don't mind if I could add one more thing. I absolutely agree with you, especially for my profession right now. Between a lot of different factors, every agency is looking for someone, and they are absolutely interviewing us. And with the generation that's coming up, they're looking for a place to belong. And if we are not welcoming, they will not feel like they belong and they will leave. And for my profession especially, it is very expensive. It's about $120,000 to bring somebody on. So.
And I'm going to add one thing to your one thing, which is, and I think you're underselling yourself, but I'm not sure everybody knows this. During the George Floyd events and the BLM, you met with the organizer of a parade or a march, and you advised on what it took to be effective and safe. And that was huge with the community.
And I will say, we are moving the needle on our hiring. By the end of the year, provided everybody passes all their training and everything they need to do, I think it's 7 people right now between hired. We got 3 in field training. I went to a conference with the deputy chief. Is it
I think it's 9.
9?
9.
Okay, there's 9. We have 9 officers.
Please knock on wood, Mayor. Please.
Okay.
Okay?
Something. So, I mean, it's,
Don't jinx us.
What we're doing is, we're doing the right things, because we've got a ton of people that want to come join the police force in Port Orchard, and it's phenomenal, and we need them. I'm going to give you some data here that's alarming.
We need alarming, that's all we need.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm going to, I have to. Because if I don't give it to you, then, anyway, I'm going to talk about committee reports now. Economic Development Tourism, you met yesterday, I believe.
Yesterday morning, yes. Thank you to Nick and or Mr. Bond and team. We met yesterday. We had a plethora of people join us and our community partners as well in economic development. So our majority of what we talked about was we received a letter from our friends at the Port Orchard Bay Street Association on some things that they're looking for out of the city. So we took some at-length time to talk about communication at the city. And so there was multiple different sections within that I think it was a 3 or 4 page letter that they wrote us. And so we're just going to break that down so that we can make sure that we address that and work through that. Some things that we may want to look at in the future, Council. We talked a little bit about holding our contractors to the same standards as our public. It was really talking about noticing of parking lot and street closures and things like that. Just making sure that we're uniform there, or that we can be better. And I think the mayor's already taken some steps since that meeting. I was included on some emails in working with our current public relations contractor we're going to step that up even further. I'll let him talk about that. We may even want to look at, I know other municipalities have the ability to sign up for email or text alerts on certain things. That may be something we want to look at in the future. So
We're doing
that came out of it.
You have to sign up for it, but we have that.
We have it? Okay, so, and maybe that just, we need to make sure that we can find that easier online and know that. And then there was 2 last things that came out of it as well. Getting some Port Orchard branding for the city. So there may be some additional discussion on that. I think that we're trying to say that maybe that belongs with some outside groups outside of the city, but I think we should have a voice, because inevitably we're going to be the ones living into that. So we'll have that. And then maybe I'm stealing some thunder from Mr. Bond in his report later, but we were putting in a grant for a project up at the industrial park as well. So I'll hopefully let him give some color on that later.
Can we get a copy of that letter from
The POB
I can absolutely. If you haven't received it, make sure that we get that out. Ms. Wallace just indicated that she'll get that out to all of us, so that I'm not breaking any kind of rules by emailing everybody.
And really the outcome from that is that purposefully I was trying to control the dollars we're spending on Josh's contract. So I was involved in all of his work orders and tasks. And I really, the problem is then I'm the choke point. And so I've got to have him meeting with department directors and giving him a little more free rein to make sure that we're, in particular when it comes to, we want to communicate everything we're doing, but in particular things that affect parking and traffic. We've got to get that information out as soon as possible. And so Dennis, I know, met with Josh directly and the engineering group. And so we're taking some steps to get him more directly engaged with the folks that are doing the work. So I think which will help.
I think that covered most everything at the high level. Anybody else on the committee can chime in, and I believe our next meeting is June 10th. We'll verify that. Don't put that in. I'm just pulling that off at the top of my head.
Okay. Utilities.
Utilities met tonight. We had a good meeting. Be a little bit shorter in the report, even though we had a plethora of items. But utilities facilities tour is now scheduled for May 31st. We tentatively have 3 people already going from the council. So if anybody else wants to go, it'll be at 1 o'clock. It'll be about 2 hours, please let Brandy know so we can send out a notice.
And that would be problematic. You don't want to do that, because if you make it a
No.
public meeting, then we have to bring the public
Yep.
along to
So,
your.
so if, you know, if
three of
somebody
you-
drops out, let me know if you have an interest. We had numerous project updates, the Foster Pilot Project, reviewing the memo from Squaxin and Fish and Wildlife. We haven't heard back from Suquamish yet, so that's on the top of the list. We already talked well 11. We talked a little bit about the Port Orchard and McCormick Woods inner ties, but that's down the road. Again, that's the water systems also with Bremerton. Marina Lift Station, please knock on wood. It's making progress. No more hiccups as of right now. And so as we get ready to make the walls and the pours, we're going to be using a lot of concrete. We did, I think I told everybody, we did a house recently and we used 12 yards of concrete for the foundation. They used, what was it, Dennis, 400 yards of concrete.
For the floor.
Yeah, just for the floor. So that just shows you how large this project is. We had a healthy discussion on fluoridation. We're not ready to bring anything to the council at this point, and we're going to discuss it at our next meeting. And I will tell you that we received some sad news. Jackie Brown has submitted her resignation effective July 8th. I hope at some point between now and then that everybody on the council would send Jackie a note honoring her service, not only to the city of Port Orchard for the last 5 years, but for the community in general, because she's been involved in so many different water projects from Manchester to the city and elsewhere, that not recognizing her service to the community would be poorly done.
She's not resigning, she's retiring.
She's retiring, I'm sorry. She's retired. Yeah, 45 years. So she's seen it all. And that's my report.
Okay, Sewer Advisory Committee, I see you meet in June. And Finance, you're scheduled to meet next week, but the Finance Director is going to be gone on vacation. So we're proposing to cancel that meeting. And he's going to give you, in his report, kind of globally to everybody, the hot topics there. So that's why some of these staff reports are going to be a little lengthy tonight. Transportation meets on the 28th. Land use meets on the 22nd. Lodging tax hasn't started meeting yet. And I don't have anything for outside agencies. Do you?
No, I had a.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I think we're thinking the same
I
thing.
got to get eyes in my back of my head. For transportation, I know that the survey of McCormick Woods.
I'll get there.
Okay. No, I understand that's going on. But what I would like, we've talked around about it a little bit. I would like to have transportation look at the viability of, I know we have the speed signage. I would
just pause. It's in my mayor's report. We're going to talk about, but there's no way that we have in our capital plans to build roundabouts.
That's not what I was going.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
Okay. Actually looking at the feasibility in some of our areas, because I know that as much as I know we're coming up to having a full police department, we'll never be able to solve it. But I would like to see the viability of being able to put cameras that actually issue tickets. They've passed a law that allows us to do that.
Not.
Then
we can pass in a school zone.
And it also said parks. And
we don't have people speeding in a park.
I wanted to ask a question about that, and I'll do that offline.
Okay.
We can talk about it later.
We can't use speed cameras for traffic enforcement, to best of my knowledge. Correct, Chief?
I believe that's correct.
So Rob, there's an update from the last land use meeting as well. I can give that.
Last night's meeting?
Yes, we had a land use meeting.
Oh.
On the 24th of last month.
Okay,
We
I'm sorry. Go
Yeah, no
ahead.
problem. It's pretty quick. I have a plethora of items to talk about.
I started something.
So we reviewed the state building code that we approved tonight, so that was done. We reviewed social pinpoint survey, which was kicked off after February 28th for the comp plan workshop, and there was good survey responses to that. We had an update on the comp plan and comments through May 7th, including a major rewrite of capital facilities planning, mandated housing, and understanding what that looks like. We reviewed the land use planning, mostly the zoning map. We did a really quick flyover on climate initiatives. And then we talked about the non-conforming structures in zones, legal non-conforming structures in zones, and how, and we experienced this before, I think, around Lowe's, where some people had some houses in a commercial zone. Anyways, the current policy is that if you have a non-conforming structure, say you're a residential development in a commercial zone, you can't change the exterior of that structure because that would be creating a further nonconformity. But we talked about maybe there should be a reasonable increase in allowance on being able to do that, say a 10% expansion of the floor area, or not the floor area, but the footprint.
We're going to discuss it next meeting.
Yeah, so that was everything that I had.
Thank you, Scott.
All right, I'm going to jump into the mayor's report. I'm going to work backwards on this because the meat's at the top. So I'm going to go to our history lesson here. So 50 years ago, 1974, the city council approved our lease at the waterfront for our DNR. We lease our the fill on our waterfront from DNR because we can't own tidelands. And that lease was $448 a year. And today, we pay DNR more than $20,000 a year for that same property. And that is why we just, Kitsap Bank, we just sent them a bill for their DNR lease for $22,000. And that's part of why we're doing the shoreline restoration, and also to build our new community center not on the DNR land, so we don't have to lease it anymore, because when we make it public space, we don't have to pay the DNR any longer. So significant amount of money. 75 years ago, in 1949, remember we talked about a street sweeper, a street sweeper that we were going to demo. Well, guess what? It showed up, and the city was vigorously testing it. And also the city council approved a new desk for the city clerk for $67.
She still has it. That was a good price.
Cute. 100 years ago in 1924, the city received a complaint that boys were congregating in the pool rooms around town. The marshal was directed to request that the proprietors of these pool rooms discourage the patronage of boys of tender years.
Tender years?
Of tender years. Directly from the minutes. All right. I gave you guys a map. If you could just look at that really quick. And Brandy, could you bring that up for the public's benefit? We got, Nick and I have been working with Rice Fergus Miller on the Orchard Street Plaza, and it's our desire to put that out to bid at the same time as the community center. But we've got some funding raising we need to do to make that reality. You know, everything in the world is getting a lot more expensive, and the alternate one, the engineer's estimate is $4.4 million. And we have an RCO grant that we've applied for, correct, Nick, for $500,000? Okay, so alternate 3 really isn't on the table, because if we get the grant, the elements, some of the elements that were removed from alternate 3, we wouldn't be able to get our $500,000. We'd save $475,000, but we'd lose $500,000 in funding. So that's probably not a good move to do. So the only real opportunity to save some money in this is in alternate 1, the parking lot is concrete, and we're planning to use it as a flexible space at times with the farmer's market. It'd be nice to have it be more durable than blacktop, but we could save $130,000 paving it versus making it concrete. And I didn't want to make, tell our design team in a vacuum without coming in and touch base. We looked at some value engineering. These were the options that they gave us. Number 3 really wouldn't be a good decision. And do you want to save $130,000 have a blacktop lot versus concrete? And
isn't it concrete pavers? Isn't that what alternative one is?
It's not is it pavers?
I think it's pavers.
It is it pavers? Okay. I don't know. There's some. So, Councilmember Diener, what are your
Well, so, we have one shot at getting this right. And so if we can afford it, I want to do it. So, but I had some questions too.
Okay.
So alternative 3 shows those bermed grassy areas. The difference between that and the other alternatives is that there's just more vegetation in those bermed areas? Or
It's
is it-
also,
Is it not-
decorative concrete. It has the light, the bulb, it's got lighting elements that are in there that were removed in alternate 3.
And the stage is removed as
And
well.
the stage.
Okay. So is that scored concrete that we'd be using otherwise?
It's concrete and pavers. It's a much more elaborate surface than in alternate 3 is just is an etched. I think it is a
Well, okay.
a scored cement treatment. We have pavers. It can't be pavers where the fuel trucks have to drive through. That's a more durable surface there. That's like a stamped concrete. But we have a lot of pavers. We have a stage. We have more elaborate lighting that lights up the plaza.
Yeah, okay. Well, those are my comments, is let's deliver the best product we can with the budget
So
we
which
have.
one do you suggest?
I like one. Let's go all
Alternate
out.
1. Do we know prices for the other 2?
Yes, I said we could save $130,000 for 2.
So-
And that's putting
So
blacktop
2 is
instead of.
130,000 less than
Le-
4.4 million.
Yes.
Or 4.3
And number
million?
3, we would lose a $500,000 grant to save $475,000. I don't think that works.
So this is just for a parking lot.
No, it is not. It's for
It is-
this entire plaza, public plaza.
Okay.
It's the space between the bank and the community center and behind it.
Behind it,
along
yeah,
water.
the asphalt parking lot.
No, there's a lot more to this than the parking lot. There's a public plaza.
Everything there in yellow.
Everything in yellow is being built.
Okay, here and here and.
And actually, all the way through between the 2 buildings, and even beyond that.
Here.
Between the bank and the community center. Yes.
I would concur with Scott. Let's find the money and do it right first time.
And we have time. I just wanted to let you know that we went through a value engineering process and looked for some things that we could trim.
I appreciate the review and looking to tighten the belt a little bit, but I concur also with Jay and Scott that we have one time to do this right, and we should be doing it right.
Right? Others have differing opinions?
Same.
Yeah.
I was on the steering committee, so I have a love of every part of this project, and this will be the jewel of our city. Let's do it right.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's what I thought too, but I didn't want to do it in a vacuum. Okay, City Hall construction, in a month, we hope to be moving into the 2nd floor again and not living out of conference rooms and kitchens and wherever else. That means the contractors are moving up here. And so it's possible, and we just don't know the schedule. So the court has to function. They're probably coming over here for a period of time. We don't know what that looks like, so we might need to do some virtual meetings for a month and a half. And what that looks like, I don't know yet. Maybe the last meeting in June and our meetings in July are possible. So, and as we know more, as we work through the construction schedule on what it is, in here, it's painting and it's lights. It's a little more extensive over in the court, over there. And I'm just communicating that we might need to do a few virtual meetings if we don't have access to the space. So, Councilmember Diener?
Maybe I'm making this up, but I thought that we had to have a component of access by the public if they wanted to walk into a meeting. Is that a misunderstanding?
That's in the code for planning commission. I don't know if it's in the code for council.
So council could be virtual, but there still has to be an in-person component for the members of the public.
Correct, yeah, that's the
Yeah.
So
law.
we will have to figure that
Figure
out.
that out.
And it just literally has to be an open space. The clerk could be there. I have some
Could be a
agencies where it's
conference
just
room
the clerk in a
downstairs.
room, yeah.
So, yeah. So, and we've got video cameras and stuff like that, so. question, the contractor pointed out to me, and I recently did carpet at home. Everything's really expensive. We did a hallway and some stairs, and it cost $5,000. I mean, it's insane what building materials cost. Your carpet, the carpet in this room, the seams are fraying, and the contractor's going, we've got a mobile, it won't be cheaper a couple of years from now. But now I have the quote, and everybody, Jay, you should sit down. It's $27,000 for the
To put in
carpet.
tiles.
And it's carpet tiles, commercial tiles, so that if something gets stained, you know, it's the same thing we did in the police department. It's very nice, looks great. I just didn't want to bring a change order for this space.
Get some bids on that? Some more quotes on that?
We can't. We have a contract with the contractor to be a change order within that. I can assure you, though, if we wait another year and somebody else has to mobilize.
Oh, no, I'm not saying that.
It'll be more expensive than,
Is LVP a consideration?
what?
LVP?
Yeah, it would echo.
Is that cheaper or, well?
Well, you know, I would recommend that we do nothing or put the same carpet we're putting in the rest of the building. But it's your call, it's your space. I just, you know, 2 years from now, when that seam starts to unravel and we have to do it, because it's a trip hazard. We've got there's two of them in the building. One's over by underneath Brandy, and the other one, if you get out in the middle of the room, you can see it. There's a seam, so.
So Mayor, how old's this carpet?
23 years old.
Wow.
Is it within our budget to do that?
I think, well, we will confirm that we still have within our change order authority, within the scope of the project. We're getting close. Noah's rolling his eyes. So we will confirm that we can afford to do it, because we have a significant change order for about $125,000, Dennis, for the planters. So we're having, the prior designers, we have an infiltration system from our roof that goes into the planters. The problem is the planters are attached to the front of the building, and that water comes in the building. And so we didn't discover that until a heavy rainstorm when the construction was going on. All of a sudden, where the heck is all this water coming from? And so we. It was in the police, wasn't it? It's in the police. It's down in finance. Yep. So that's a significant. So all we're going to do is correct the water intrusion and put drain rock into it, and we will have a subsequent project later where our Public Works Department puts topsoil and plants back in outside of this. But we have to solve the water intrusion problem and not put our gutters into that at our foundation. Is not a good thing. So we've got that and a couple other small things, but I'm kind of hearing, nobody likes the number, but we should probably do it.
This
And
building's
if we
costing
can
more and
afford-
more.
If we can afford to do it.
Yeah,
That's kinda
only
what
if we can afford to.
Mayor,
do it.
also on the carpet, the most expensive part is the prep. This is glued down, and all the other floors, it was an extensive process where they had to scrape that glue, and they brought machinery in. So putting the carpet's the easy part. It's prepping
out
the
the old
surface.
stuff.
Yeah, because that stuff's also nasty.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm hearing
Reluctant support.
reluctant support, and if we can afford to within the dollars that we have. on the
So
project.
I'd like to confirm my support, but I've noticed coming into town already, the weather vane on the top
Yeah.
has already caused discoloration on our new roof.
No, it's copper.
We can walk out there and go look at it. There's something coming off of that on our new roof already.
It's patina, and it's supposed to be there. It's copper. It was already there.
On the roofing materials.
On the roof itself, the composition roof,
Yes.
some of the composition roof hasn't been completed because the scaffolding, it's the old roof.
Okay.
So
So
the
I
scaffolding
would
is sitting on top.
have you go take a peek right below where the chickeny whatever's on top of the building.
Bleeding through, bleeding down?
Yes. Something is bleeding onto the new roof tiles.
Okay, only.
Take a picture.
As viewed from.
I'll
where-
try,
If
but
it's
I'm
where the
driving, so I don't want to say that in front of
Okay,
the
if
chief.
it's where the scaffolding is,
Nope,
That's-
it's above the scaffolding.
Okay, all right.
Have to take a peek,
All right.
take a look.
We'll have Dennis take a look at it.
walk by tomorrow.
So back on target, 23 years old, you know, I hate the price, but it's not gonna get cheaper. 1,
Agreed.
2, 3 years from now, when we're gonna be forced to do it, I say do it.
But let's look at the budget a little bit.
We will
We
look at
can't
the
sell
budget
remnants
first to
of
make sure.
souvenirs.
Oh.
All right, I'm going to move on. I got other things, and staff has things to present too. So we all received a letter from Mustangs on the Waterfront, and we talked about this yesterday at Economic Development and Tourism. We have 4 projects, or excuse me, 4 events that are in our code that are grandfathered, that we pay for the public safety aspect of it and the public works crews. And I just want to run through real quick, and Eric shared with me, it is way cheaper for the private sector to do this. And what was it, $3,200, $3,500?
Yeah, we just paid $3,800 for the grad parade to have a whole company come in of certified everything, and their signs, set them up, run everything for us, and take them down and haul them back. So all we have to do is but cut some checks. So that's what we're gonna do.
So I'm going to give you a rundown of the 4 events that we do. I've got the numbers. Chimes costs us about $7,000 for our piece of it. The parade is about $8,000, and that's Public Works, police, and mutual aid with the fire department. The fireworks display this last year was $13,000, and the cruise, and it draws a lot of people to downtown. The fire and police was $22,000. Public Works was almost $14,000 for a total of $36,400
For the cruise?
For the cruise?
for the cruise.
Just for the cruise?
One event. People, it does. I mean, I'm not saying, so I would caution us to add, because if we add, they're asking to be added into that mix, and if we do that for this one event, we probably have to consider it for all the other events, and it's, as Eric reinforced, it's way cheaper. And here's the other feedback I got from the merchants was the Mustang Group, I really appreciate their event. They don't have the draw that the cruise does. They don't, and they want to, they have while they don't close the street, they have a similar footprint on the waterfront, which greatly impacts parking. And I've encouraged them in the past, and the merchants reiterated this yesterday, is they really like to see their footprint shrink and not to impact. So I'm going to write a letter to the Mustangs that, we've discussed their request, and there's no appetite to add them as one of the events that we pay for, and that we got feedback from the merchants that requesting that they shrink the footprint.
Or actually move it to the high school. That's another suggestion.
Okay. Do you want me to be that bold to say?
Other suggestions from the committee were relocating it to someplace else like the high school.
Just to give some color, right? Like to the tune that the merchant said they want to close that day. Right? Like that's, and I hate hearing that, especially as the chair of.
They want to close
that
it?
their
They're going to close
business.
their businesses because it adversely affects their businesses.
So, for that particular event. So, it was our recommendation to the mayor to say, yeah, I don't think we should make this one of the grandfathered.
And they didn't have that many cars either, if you really want to get into the details, so.
Okay, so I got my direction here. I just want to run it by you guys. The 730 Prospect Building, we did another walkthrough today, so we're signed around on a full price offer on it.
Back on again?
Back on again.
Okay.
We went over and inspected, there was some asbestos abatement that was done, and there was some sealing work that was supposed to be done in the basement, and we're not satisfied with how well it was sealed, and we want them to apply another coat of sealant. It's got a new roof? Okay, it's passed inspection. That's all passed inspection. There was some asbestos on the ceiling, which should be up on the roof around an old chimney. That's been abated and removed. So we have one little item that we, and it's pretty minor, just to apply another, what, the basement gets wet because it's got a sump pump, and we just don't want, we want it sealed better in the basement. That's all we're asking for, and it's pretty minor, but we shouldn't have to do it. So that was the outcome from our inspection. They said to have it done by next week. We plan to bring that purchase and sale to you on the 28th and close by the end of the month. The county still has a lease that's in effect for another year and a half, and we're going to talk to the county about maybe extending that lease if they're willing to, but the state actually pays, so it'll be complicated, but there's a year and a half to work on it, and we desire to have some parking. All right, got 2 left, and then I'm going to so we put those radar signs up in McCormick Woods Drive, and we put, the first week they were up, and so these are our new signs, okay, and this is why we need more police officers, because the only way we're going to change this behavior is to write tickets, because this is
literally in front of my house.
This is horrible, what we're seeing. So April 10th to April 18th, we put those signs up for 1 week in stealth mode. We had an average of 665 cars a day drive through that zone.
Can you specify which road you're talking about?
McCormick Woods Drive.
Okay.
Okay? Whereabouts, Eric? About midpoint?
Fells Lane. So when you pull in the back entrance, go left, then Ravens in front of you. It's about probably 700 feet up.
And
My street, Kel's right there. It's right.
Okay.
Right.
And then it goes all the way to Hawkstone, is
True.
where the other sign is.
So we're capturing, 665 cars a day, 76% of the people were speeding.
This is stealth mode.
But
This is in stealth mode. Nobody
that
knows.
includes 1 mile an hour.
That is the flaw to this, is I don't know how much they were speeding, and so whether we have to reconfigure these differently. Here, at least one vehicle, the top speed we recorded during that week was 73 miles an hour in a 25 mile an hour zone. Okay? So in week 6,
Was it the chief? No,
No,
somebody.
excuse
There
me.
wasn't. There was no police activity.
It might have been a police officer.
Yeah, that's a police officer going through, not the
Excuse
chief,
me,
but
it was
like.
60 miles an hour.
Okay.
It was, so it was 60 miles an hour. So I'm sorry, I skipped the line. Week 1, we turned the display on. Now it flashes at you and tells you you're speeding.
What was the date? Sorry, week 1 date.
The 19th through, 7 days later.
Present day.
So 690 cars, a few more cars, 3% reduction in the number of cars, 73% speeding. And a sign is flashing you, telling you, and this is when we saw a car doing 73 miles an hour.
So can we get more data than just that? Like I'd like to know how many people are going 70 miles an hour and what we can do about it, right? Like,
So,
I'll tell you, 45 is common.
45 is,
An hour over is,
yeah.
is it, if we're doing, if it's a
Okay, so I-
25 zone and we're doing 26.
I hear you, and I've asked for,
Okay,
I
so you're
can
already-
only give you what I have, okay? So just relax, all right? There's a problem, though.
Are they asking for a speed
So
bumps?
second week out there, average 675 cars, the speeding went down by another 2%, 71%. The signs have been up for 2 weeks flashing. Now, the top speed did go down to 47 miles an hour, though, in 25.
By average speed.
See, that's why I want to know, right? Because it'd be one time that there was a chase or
was-
something.
Yeah.
I guess,
I
Rob,
don't
my
think we're
question is that are those signs configurable so we can get that breakdown?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. When we're looking into that, we're
Okay.
talking to the manufacturer. We can only, this is the data that I got, I'm sharing it. Okay.
Cool.
Now I'm gonna move on, and I'd like to turn the speed bump survey off tomorrow, okay, and I'll tell you why. Okay, we surveyed Merrimack Drive and all of the streets that feed into Merrimack that you have to drive Merrimack to get to McCormick Woods Drive. So it was 120 households. 104 people took the survey. As a matter of fact, Brandy, could you bring up that? I got a slide deck for this. Doggone it. What am I doing? Josh gave me this really cool slide deck. Remember, there's more than one person in a household. So we had 260 people, I believe, look at the survey. 104 people took the survey. Drum roll. Everybody's standing around the room. We're all getting.
Can we go a little overtime?
Okay, so I'm not going to wait for, so 70% of the people that took the survey don't believe that they're effective. Okay, that was question one. Question two was, would you like them removed? And 72% said yes. Now.
Just put them on McCormick Woods Drive.
Put them over by you.
Let's go.
Yeah, staff did report at a transportation committee meeting. Now, we have data on this street. Before we put the speed bumps in, people were doing 31 miles an hour, which in comparison to the data we're getting from the other radar signs, I get they're speeding, but it's not like is out at the other place. And the speed bumps have reduced speeding to 23 miles an hour, so 8 miles an hour, because you have to slow down, or you should slow down unless you want to trash your suspension. So.
And part of the effectiveness has been whether they're too far apart so that smaller cars can
Go back.
I think the real telling thing is the residents that live there don't, for the large part, don't like them. This was intended when the utility or the transportation committee, this was done as a pilot project, and that's the way it was couched at the transportation committee. Operations and myself, we had concerns about the effect on operations in the snowplow. This isn't an arterial street, so putting them on McCormick Woods Drive would be a bad idea because we have to run a snowplow down that. Anyway, we surveyed the community. I want some direction from you guys what to do with the speed bumps. So, Councilmember Rosabepi.
Obviously, I have a dog in this fight since I live on one of the streets. One of the things that I questioned the survey on is the fact is that it didn't take into account that a lot of people walk that don't live on those streets around those curves. I understand why people don't like them, and I don't have a problem if they are removed. However, I also believe that there are different avenues like striping and even putting up the speed signs, one at each end of Merrimack Drive would help also in that area. In other words, I have no problem in the speed humps, pillows, whatever being removed, as long as we're taking some other action as we look at McCormick Woods Drive and Merrimack.
Yeah.
That's my
We're happy, we're gonna move those radar signs throughout the city. It's giving us data and it's giving us information. I don't think it's changing behavior.
I
The
don't think it
only
is
way
either.
we're gonna change behavior is getting fully staffed in our police department and having a consistent emphasis patrol and changing there's just outright lawlessness everywhere that.
Speed hump's a little cheaper than that, though.
But obviously the community they don't like them.
Overwhelming.
Well, nobody wants to be forced to slow down.
Yeah.
As a serial speeder, I'm here to say I don't want that. Right? I'll raise my hand. I am. It is what it is, and I'll live into it. They slow me down. I will tell you that they're effective. But
And I'll just add that also as a sometimes speeder, that you get to realize those flashing lights don't do anything. It doesn't take much to figure that out.
Over here, just
Those flashing lights do something for me. I see them and I slow down. It reminds me,
after
oh,
you-
what's, I pay
Yeah,
I pay
but
attention.
You're probably not a serial speeder, are you?
No.
So, I recognize, we need to change behavior in the community. There's no doubt about it, okay? But
Yep.
I want to address this issue and put some closure on this. Heard from Jay, Scott, where you, I'm not doing this in a vacuum.
It's the will of the community. I just think that emphasis is on patrol is gonna be important. And, not consistent in terms of they're gonna be there every Friday between, 8 and 9, but mix it up.
Chief and I are committed to getting properly staffed, and we know where the hot spots are, we know where our accidents are, and, you know, we can use these signs as a tool to know where we have problems and to do traffic enforcement.
Mayor, just a point of order. At what point in time do we have to say we're?
At 9 o'clock? 9:30.
9:30, okay, sorry. Okay.
And
So, as a county employee who is never in a hurry to get anywhere, not speeding, there's so many places in McCormick that could use those speed humps. I mean, I'm sorry, Merrimack, it rated high, but there's some new areas out there that it's darn right dangerous. I mean, it's, St. Andrews is absolutely, where the lift station's going in, the well, that is absolutely a dangerous road. And people walk that road every day. The amount of bus stops on McCormick Woods Drive, and right where that speed sign is, that radar sign, that school bus has to back into our street every day and go back the other way. And there's kids crossing right there. It blows my mind how fast people go. So, I mean,
that's why I opened with how fast people were going on that 25-mile-an-hour road.
It's no
70
exaggeration.
miles an hour.
Yeah.
That's just, so where are you at then on?
We did basically someone challenged us on it to do a full survey. We did the full survey, and I think they need to be removed.
So, clarify, I'm not the guy doing 70 to 25 as a serial speeder, right? But I do go a little fast. I'm with Eric on that, with the caveat, I'd like to see them redeployed. They've spoken, I think.
I would.
I agree.
I don't think we should just be dropping these in a neighborhood someplace.
No,
because-
check with the
Would
neighborhood
hope everything we
first.
do is thoughtful, but
And I would say the one misstep we took in this whole process is this survey should have been on the front side of this before we deployed them, okay? And I recognize that now, okay? But
Well, we also-
I think, I think we've got to have a complaint and that somebody's asking for these speed bumps and that not just, and just because somebody gives a petition with 10, in this case it was 13 people, okay, if an area of our city asks for these speed bumps, because we're gonna have them and because we're gonna pull them up, and then we're gonna do a survey.
Yeah.
Just like we did, this cost us $500 to do this survey, so we have, how does everybody feel about this?
Preceded by the data that you need to fine tune.
Yes.
I would ask, at some point in time, and this is a rhetorical question, so I'm not looking for an answer. At what point in time do those 30%, their safety is more important than somebody's right to have no speed or whatever? I'm just saying, at some point in time, we have to make difficult decisions. This is an easy one, okay? But we may have difficult decisions later on.
I think
So-
we're gonna solve this with traffic enforcement. Or
And-
improve, at least
re-
improve it.
Retraining, so,
Yeah,
okay.
improvement.
I'm
So
good with that.
is anybody, I haven't heard anybody speak against removing them.
The survey, you're right, Mr. Mayor. As a member of the Transportation Committee last year, we should have taken this step prior to initiating this trial basis on these. The trial basis went for a year. We've heard from the survey, from the citizens out there, overwhelmingly, they want them removed. I believe we should remove them. But I also believe we should have a plan in place to start writing tickets, to start curbing behavior.
And it's coming. We got,
Yeah, I mean.
by fall, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, it's not coming anytime soon in terms of like the next 6 months, but when we can get to 28 or 30, that allows a dedicated unit that can address not just traffic issues, but can address problem hotspots throughout the city, whether it be some of the incidents we had last weekend, or, the last few years we had a lot of issues out on Sinclair Inlet, or when we have speeding issues.
So an officer just for McCormick?
No, we patrol the whole city. Nice try, though.
No, it's
So
just
are you-
one. It's actually, probably we're calling it a proactive unit that's riding the bikes. It's doing traffic enforcement. It's out on the marine, when in the summertime, they're out on the boat. You know, when we're dealing with derelict boats. And, you know, in the past, to deal with those derelict boats, we were having to authorize overtime because we needed to, because we had to address the problem. So we're going to get there. It won't be today, and it's not going to be tomorrow, but by the end of the year, we should be in a very different place provided all of our recruits work out.
So
That's our commitment
I
to
just
you.
wanted to follow up on what you had to say, Chief. So there's no resources to even occasionally put somebody out there on patrol?
On patrol or on overtime?
Sorry.
Traffic enforcement.
Traffic
We're
enforcement.
doing it a little bit as.
Yeah, we're working to have, so we have, I'll be respectful of my colleagues, I'll speak faster. So we do have what are called Fat Fridays. When we aren't in-service training, they will go out and they'll do an emphasis patrol. We find that it's much more effective to do traffic emphasis when you have a number of people as opposed to just throwing one person at the problem, because we want to be very, very visible, and we want infractions to be provided as appropriate. That is what changes behavior. But again, as it stands right now with our staffing levels as it is, most people are not wanting to come in and work overtime on their weekends because they're already working overtime during the week. But that will change as our training tempo goes back to more
Chief,
reasonable.
that last Fat Friday, you shared some data with me, how many tickets you wrote, how many people it was.
It was, I think, around 50. And in fact, I had a couple of officers that didn't feel like they wrote as many as some of their peers, so they went out the next day and wrote some more. Again, we do not require a number of tickets. We require contacts, but there are enough people that had significant moving violations that warranted infractions.
One afternoon on a Friday, we wrote 50 tickets.
Just one last on this one, so we can move forward. If you didn't see it, there was an article in the paper that the traffic deaths in the state on the highways has increased by, I think, 10% from last year, and almost double from before the pandemic. And a lot of it's been attributed to speeding as well as substance abuse.
Doesn't surprise me at all.
Well, a lot of it should be attributed to the rollback in legislation.
So,
Yeah.
Some of it.
Yeah.
Hey, Chief, question for you. What do you think about the idea of just dropping off an unmanned vehicle in some of these areas for a day?
That'll last about 5 minutes.
It would?
Human beings are smart. It's the same reason why the signage doesn't change behavior. If it's if it's a vehicle that's unoccupied and there's no response, if you go by it at 70 miles an hour, it's not effective. We've tried that in other communities that I've been, and it's not a bad idea. I've just never seen it be effective.
All right, let's move on. I got Department, Debbie's got a bunch of information. We talked about a number of staffing modifications and one new position for the, asset management program. And so she's gonna walk in 2 weeks. Normally we would take this to the work study. Next work study is packed. And so we wanna talk about it here a little bit tonight because we're gonna ask you to vote on this and wanna get your questions answered this evening. Because I'm gonna quit talking. I'm gonna let Debbie talk now.
And before I get into this, I did want to just give you one other update. We were talking earlier tonight about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Your Employee Inclusion Commission launched their all-employee survey about 10 days ago now. As of yesterday, 68 of just over 100 employees had already responded. And there's still about 8, maybe 10 officers who've not even received it yet. We are sending them to those particular officers on that Friday training day so they can take their 15 minutes in the course of that training time to take that survey. So I was hoping for 70% response rate. I think we're gonna get there, plus some is my hope. So those employees that haven't completed it will continue to get reminders through the end of the month. But we're hoping to get as many responses as we can. So I wanted to give you that update, and we'll have results probably early July that we'll be able to start parceling out information. So tonight I wanted to, and the way the night played out has worked out really well for this. You guys talked about a rabbit hole. Councilmember Fenton wanted to play Groundhog's Day and repeat it, and I feel like I'm doing Groundhog's Day because I've shown you all of this in a previous version back in February, and then we're going to review it tonight, and you're going to review it in 2 weeks. So we're going to do Groundhog's Day here. We have been talking since probably November with our Teamsters bargaining group out at the Public Works shop. And you're going to hear me say this again in 2 weeks because I can't underplay this enough. Your Public Works management team has been incredible. Dennis Ryan came in, Jeff Hagelin was here 6 months maybe before Dennis's arrival. They looked at this organization and the way it's structured with the current manager having 22 direct reports and said this isn't sustainable. So I was nervous. They talked me into it. We went to the table and said, what if we eliminate the foreman position, which is in your union, push those duties down to some of your lead workers and create a management level, mid-management level in there, and they ultimately have agreed to that. So we're coming to you with a union contract proposal and staffing changes. Right now we have 3 coordinators in that department, water, stormwater, sewer. With the union negotiations, we've agreed to 5. They have voted on this and passed this, by the way. That's why I'm sharing it in public. We'll continue to have the 3, and we're going to call them lead workers now. But we also are going to create a lead worker in our parks and facilities component and a lead worker in the streets. Again, let experts specialize rather than being the Jacks and Jills of all trades. Give them a lead worker that can have the seasonal workers and additional less skilled labor helping them out. And it's greater opportunities for them to branch out and kind of flatten this organizational structure. We have 2 mechanics. One of the mechanics had come to us about a year and a half ago under the prior Public Works Administration, asking to be a lead mechanic, and we did not do that at this time. We think now that that probably makes sense with all these other changes. So not adding any bodies anywhere, we're just restructuring. So be a lead mechanic, and then retain 1 mechanic. We're just changing title of our Public Works personnel and our labor to Maintenance Technician 2, Maintenance Technician 1. Nobody likes the current titles. If we put an ad out for Public Works personnel, what does that mean, right? So we think this will help on the recruitment side as well. So those are the changes within the union contract. Then kind of going hand in hand with that, Jeff Hageland, our current operations manager, will take over upon Jackie Brown's retirement, the responsibilities for the utility side. Right now, Jeff is responsible for the operations side. Jackie's responsible for the utility side. Jackie's based here in City Hall, yet supervises employees at the shop, but doesn't really get contact with them. It just hasn't really worked. So Jeff Hageland will be responsible for all operations and repairs and maintenance and compliance. He'll have under him then an operations supervisor, which is a brand new position, and the utility supervisor, which we'll create when Jackie retires. At your April retreat, Mayor talked to you about our current office assistant, also in Public Works. Really kind of working out of class. She's been working above and beyond her job description, helping out in some compliance areas with some other staff vacancies. And Dennis has recognized that and has requested an upgrade in her position. And right now, the title we're working with is Public Works Administrative Specialist. There's an asterisk next to that because we're literally still working on a couple of these. Dennis and I have a meeting tomorrow. And then the other position the mayor talked to you about at the retreat, which is the asset management specialist to help us with our new asset management system.
Debbie, if I may, so that what's the additional work that she's taken on and she learned, we've lost our stormwater manager 9 months ago.
I think so.
And haven't been able to fill that position. She picked it up, learned it herself, reached out to peers, and she did it. You know, and so we've got the compliance stuff that we're going to push out into the shop, but she's actually doing the administrative side of those permits for us. And we're just recognize she's capable of doing it. She figured it out on her own, and we just feel that's beyond the scope of her job responsibilities, and we should be paying her appropriately. So in all of these things, other than this new asset management person, are existing FTEs, and we're just restructuring duties and moving things around within Public Works. So.
Yes. And so the last one on this list, well, the next one, I should say, the Stormwater Program Coordinator is our vacant position for about 9 months, as Mayor just indicated. The department is looking at creating that as an Engineer 1 position. I can't advertise that position right now because you guys have not set a salary for that. So I'm going to come to you next regular council meeting, ask you to approve a salary for it. Under the law now, I have to advertise a salary. So we'll potentially, and again, Dennis and I are meeting tomorrow on this one as well, potentially advertise for an Engineer 1, see if we can attract anybody. So there's lots of moving pieces here. We're gonna you guys have to approve it, then we have to recruit for it, see if we can fill it, and then the shuffling's all gonna happen, and then it's all gonna fall in Noah's lap because he's gotta even that all up in the budget document. So bear with us for a little bit because there's lots of moving pieces. And then while I'm bringing you job descriptions in 2 weeks, I'm going to do a little cleanup. There's a couple job descriptions that I can't find record of council ever officially approving, so we're just going to take care of those.
And from a budget standpoint, how we fund our engineers in the budgeting process is general fund, but in reality, their time is charged to the activities that they do. So when we bring this budget amendment forward, that one is going to show that it impacts the general fund. And depending on who we hire and what their skills are, we might hire a utilities person. We're desperate. We're going to take whatever we can get because we need people to do engineering work over there. So that one will probably open your eyes more than any one of them because it's going to show it's going to come out of the general fund. Because it might, and it might not. We don't know until we actually get a good candidate, so.
And again, I just want to go on the record saying thank you to the Teamsters Local 589 for working with us on this. They see what we're trying to do, and we're supportive of that and giving some more opportunities to some of their members to get a couple promotions. So we're very thankful for that because the work just keeps coming, right? And so more and more people ultimately are going to be needed to accomplish that work.
And I know we're not giving you the whole picture at this point. We're giving you as much as we have, but we didn't want to bring it for your approval in 2 weeks. And not that any of this was foreign. We've talked about it at the retreat. We've talked about it at work studies and other places. I just want to, continue touch you guys with this so that it's not a shock to you when we bring, the org chart with a whole bunch of changes to it in 2 weeks. So, questions? Okay.
Great job.
Yeah,
Thank
nice.
you.
Great job.
All right, I'm gonna go to Noah, because Noah's gonna be gone next week, and he's got some things he wants to talk about a budget amendments.
Well, so I think most of our conversation tonight, you guys have heard about different projects and personnel changes. So I originally planned on bringing a budget amendment May 28th. I don't think I'm going to force that since I'm going to be gone next week. I prefer to get a little more time to make sure I capture all these other contracts and adjustments. Also give HR and Public Works a chance to kind of let this settle out so we can budget appropriately and then make sure we set up all the employees correctly for coding. So expect a budget amendment in June. Again, most of them are going to be cleanup efforts, and I would say this would be a cleanup effort after council takes action on this item, and I'm just going to come in behind it and again provide the budget authority for that. The other budget item I did want to mention was, I believe Councilmember Morrissey asked about the budget for the thermoplastic, and it was $45,000 in the budget. So the award was for $37,000, so we were on par with budget for that. And Mayor, I mentioned that we will cancel the Finance Committee next week, but I will push out the financial statements to the full council as well as the monthly budget report before I leave this week. So look for that.
Thank you, Noah. Mr. Ryan?
Very briefly, I just wanted to announce that next week is the observance of National Public Works Week. It celebrates and contributes of the contributions of public works teams and the importance of public works infrastructures in our communities. The purpose of this observance is to raise awareness about essential roles of public works in daily life. And just consider that next week, May 19th through the 25th.
Bond?
As was reported on the Economic Development Committee meeting, we did submit a industrial lands readiness grant to the Department of Commerce. The city owns a significant area out at the Port Orchard Industrial Park that includes a portion of the quarry that we previously agreed to allow RV to expand their operation on. It's our water tower, the old dump site, and a couple of properties on the other side of Old Clifton Road. And the project is to apply for money to do studies and engineering to prepare an industrial lot subdivision so that we could potentially surplus lots that aren't needed for our own facilities for additional economic development, light industrial development. And so there is quite a bit of topography on this site. You have to build a road at about a 10% slope to access the upper reaches of the property. But our hope is that the Department of Commerce would fund that and help us get that land ready so that we can separate the pieces we need from the pieces that we don't need and then make those available. That's all.
Archer?
Nothing to report this evening.
Chief?
I know I've talked a lot, but not to steal anything from Dennis. It is National Police Week, and tomorrow is the Kitsap County Law Enforcement Memorial. If anyone is interested in coming, it's 3 p.m. at Miller Woodlawn. Thank you.
Oh, what is it?
Sorry.
Do you have any update on the at the high school that you could share?
Nothing that we haven't already put out. So we are coordinating with them. School is open tomorrow as normal on a schedule, I believe.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I just want to add my thanks and gratitude for keeping our community safe and specifically the youth. Thank you.
Yes, thank
you. And the entire team.
3 p.m. And where was that again?
At Miller Woodlawn Funeral Home and Memorial up in Bremerton.
Wallace?
I don't have anything.
Okay. Well, we're good of the, or actually, we're to public comment.
Comments?
My goodness, all right. And we're got our second citizen comment period. Are you wishing to address the city council?
Yes, I finally got it.
All right. If you could just identify yourself for the record.
My name's Lila Mason. I've lived here for over 30 years. My son, Jamin Mason, was here about a year ago and talked to you about parking your cars for a week and understanding disability and all that entails. And I just wanted to say your bathroom is not handicap accessible. He had to have somebody open the door to let him in, and thank goodness I stayed out there and heard him hollering to have me open the door so he could get out. And I just wanted to address that. I also wanted to say to the chief, unfortunately, my daughter is an addict, and she has 3 daughters that live with her. And the oldest daughter is now living in Tacoma with her aunt and uncle, and she went from staying home to watch her younger siblings and missing schools, so she was passing no classes. Now over there where she's supported, she has a 3.7 grade average. She's making up challenging classes and making them up, and she just had the lead female role in Newsies in the play they put on. Wow. And my daughter is on CPS's speed dial. They go there, and I am very concerned about my 2 younger granddaughters. But every time I have had any interactions with the police, they have been so amazing. Like they ask about my older granddaughter that's in Tacoma. They ask about her for names, by name, and she. I really appreciate that there is one officer that particularly deals with them as a family, and she has been a lifeline to my older granddaughter and to the younger ones. And I just cannot thank you enough. When I called for a wellness check, when the officer called me back, he said, I just want you to know you did the right thing. No matter what happens, if you are concerned, you did the right thing. And I can't tell you how much that has meant to me. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you for waiting.
Yeah,
Thank
you for your
you.
Thank you
comments.
very much for waiting.
Yeah, and we were aware of that situation that happened with the restrooms, and we made adjustments to the door closures. They were too firm, and so they weren't compliant at that time. So, and we have made adjustments to those doors so that they are compliant. So, just want to make you.
So are they automatic?
They're not automatic, but the tension on them was too strong, so someone in a wheelchair couldn't pull them because they would roll.
But if my son, he only has one arm
Yeah.
that has purposeful movement, so he has to use that for his wheelchair.
Yeah.
So he still could not get out.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, I appreciate. All right. Anyone else wishing to address the council? Anybody online? There's nobody else in the audience. Brandy says there's nobody else online. Okay. And we are at, close the second citizen comment period. We've got 5 minutes for the good of the order because we have to go home at 9:30.
Okay, I'll make it real quick. I'd like to thank my fellow members of the council. It's been 4 months, and things are gelling together. I appreciate the new council members drinking from a fire hose, and I appreciate the more elderly council members, working with everybody. We had some good discussion tonight, so I greatly appreciate that.
Thank you.
Elderly, eh?
Oh, one thing for the good of the order. Are we going to put it next month for the second citizen to talk? Will that be
We
soon
need
here?
to change our code, and there's a number of code changes that Charlie's working on, so you guys have to approve the code changes for us to be able to do that.
We
We
approve.
had that programmed for June, I believe.
Is it June?
I think it was June.
It was on a schedule, so
Okay.
it's about a month away. Perfect.
Real quick, I'll go through this. Coffee with the council member. It was a full house on Saturday. I'm really thankful that we do have the turnout of the 3 max, and everyone continues to show up and participate because there's a lot of people in there. So we just have to keep standing up and keeping it going. I'm going to work with Brandy on getting a sign-up sheet together. Numerous people have asked if we can schedule months out, and I think 6 months is probably a good amount. And then we can, if you have to cancel for whatever reason, it's pretty easy to find somebody to take your spot. I think folks are attending, what they're telling myself at least. A lot of people are showing up just to put a face to a name, and that's pretty important. I actually enjoy that part more than one interaction that I had. That was different. Got my first tongue lashing from somebody. She wouldn't say why. And other people want to show up. They're showing up to ask like what the role of a council member even is. They don't know. And we're advertising to come out and meet a council member, and they don't even know what the role is. So we explain what that is. We don't assign work. We're not in charge of department heads, nothing like that. But we are there for their concerns to bring information back and possibly answer a question on the spot if we know what the topic is. So one last thing, it's pretty good. One really good comment, a lady showed up to ask if there's any way that there could be, and I know this is a lot of work, a monthly newsletter that would describe what work was done, like projects, big things that was done this month, and what they can look forward to the next month. So which would be like a traffic issue or something like that. And that could be put out in the email, a link on the Facebook page, I don't know, a link on the front page of the website. But some kind of information on possibly a one-page newsletter that described what was accomplished, big things obviously, and what to look forward to the next month for scheduling purposes.
Sounds like a good role for the PIO.
Yeah,
Right.
we
Right.
were doing a quarterly newsletter. It just got to be such a heavy lift for the public works folks that we're short-staffed with right now, and so as we get staffed up and have some more capacity in that area, I want to do it. It's just I'm taking people away from actually doing the work and delivering on this projects, and we've got so much going on right now. But I'd like to see it maybe come back in the fall if we can once we get over the hump on some of the stuff and getting another body or two over in the engineering department.
Hey.
And then one of the outcomes too, that dip in the road.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask that. I drove by
Yeah,
it.
it was a failed storm structure, so.
Yeah.
So they were out there working on it today. Timing couldn't have been worse. They got the road closed, flaggers down over here. There was no way to get around Port Orchard. Anyway,
No, that wasn't too bad though, because I drove by the dip.
I went by a couple times too. Other good of the order?
Yeah, I was just going to make the motion, make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye. Oh, my goodness.